Take a deep breath and settle in. You're exactly where you need to be right now. Your body already knows it's time to rest. And tonight, we're going on a journey together. A journey that will change everything you thought you knew about intelligence, about human history, and about the very DNA flowing through your veins right now as you relax deeper into comfort. For over a century, we've been told a simple story. Neanderthals were primitive. They were brutish, unintelligent, evolutionary dead ends who couldn't compete with our superior Homo sapiens ancestors. They died out because they simply weren't smart enough to survive. It's a comfortable narrative, one that makes us feel good about ourselves, about our place at the supposed top of the evolutionary ladder. But what if I told you that story is wrong? Not just slightly wrong, but fundamentally, disturbingly wrong. What if the evidence has been mounting for decades that Neanderthals possessed forms of intelligence that would frighten modern researchers if they fully acknowledged them? What if scientists have been quietly discovering capabilities in our extinct cousins that challenge our entire understanding of what it means to be intelligent, to be conscious, to be human? Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in a cave dwelling 40,000 years ago. The sun is setting over an ice age landscape, painting the snow-covered valleys in shades of amber and rose. You're surrounded by family, and a fire crackles warmly in the center of your shelter. The day's work is done. Now is the time for stories, for connection, for the slow descent into peaceful sleep. This was the Neanderthal reality, and across the valley, another family was doing exactly the same thing. But there was something different about them, something that modern science has been reluctant to fully acknowledge. Those Neanderthal minds were processing information in ways we're only beginning to understand. Their children were learning through methods that neuroscientists now recognize as remarkably sophisticated. Their elders were passing down knowledge that had been refined over hundreds of thousands of years. You might be wondering why you haven't heard this before. Why did your school textbooks show Neanderthals as hunched, dim-witted creatures? Why do museums still sometimes depict them as barely human? The answer is both simple and deeply troubling. Acknowledging Neanderthal intelligence dismantles narratives that modern humans have built our entire self-concept upon. It challenges the idea of inevitable human progress. It forces us to confront the possibility that extinction doesn't always come to the less intelligent. But here's something even more remarkable, something that makes this personally relevant to you as you rest here tonight. Recent genetic studies have revealed that if your ancestors came from outside sub-Saharan Africa, you carry Neanderthal DNA, not a tiny, negligible amount. Between 1 and 4% of your entire genome comes from these supposedly primitive people. That means right now, as you breathe slowly and deeply, Neanderthal genes are expressing themselves in your body. They're managing your immune responses, processing your energy, perhaps even influencing how you think and dream. You are not just learning about Neanderthals tonight. You are learning about yourself, about capabilities that lie dormant in your own genetic code, about an inheritance that science is only beginning to unravel. As your mind begins to drift into that comfortable space between waking and sleeping, consider this. What if the intelligence you inherited from Neanderthal ancestors has been waiting all this time to be recognized, acknowledged, honored? Feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation now. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Like your ancestors 40,000 years ago settling by their fires, you're entering the sacred time of rest, of story, of connection across impossible spans of time. Your nervous system recognizes this ancient pattern. For 300,000 years, humans and their cousins have found peace in moments like this. Tonight, we're going to explore forbidden territory together. We're going to examine evidence that makes researchers uncomfortable. We're going to discover abilities that Neanderthals possessed which modern humans have lost. And we're going to understand why acknowledging their intelligence is so threatening to established narratives that scientists, institutions, and textbooks have been slow to embrace the truth. The journey begins with something simple, something measurable, something that can't be argued away or explained into comfortable irrelevance. We begin with the brain itself, because when you actually look at Neanderthal skulls, when you measure cranial capacity, when you examine neural architecture, you discover something that changes everything. You discover that size matters, structure matters, and the story we've been told simply doesn't match the physical evidence. Let your mind drift now toward that discovery. Feel curiosity mixing with relaxation, creating the perfect state for absorbing ancient wisdom. The Neanderthal family across the valley is settling in too, their consciousness lowering as darkness deepens, preparing for the dreams that will process the day's experiences into lasting knowledge. You're joining them across 40 millennia, connected by the universal human experience of bedtime peace, of story-induced trance, of the gentle transition from waking awareness into the deeper realms of consciousness. The secret is about to unfold. The truth that changes everything is approaching, but there's no rush, no urgency. Let it come to you at the pace of ancient storytelling, at the rhythm of consciousness slowly dissolving into rest. You're safe here, you're comfortable here, and you're about to discover something remarkable about the intelligence that flows through your own DNA, inherited from people we once dismissed as primitive, but who were actually extraordinary in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. Breathe slowly, sink deeper. The journey into Neanderthal genius begins now, and it starts with something you can't argue with: the physical structure of a brain that was, in many ways, superior to your own. Let yourself sink even deeper into comfort now as we examine something that makes neuroscientists genuinely uncomfortable when they're being honest in private conversations. We're going to look at the Neanderthal brain, and what we discover there challenges a century of assumptions about intelligence, evolution, and human superiority. Picture a Neanderthal woman standing at the entrance to her cave as moonlight illuminates the Ice Age landscape. She's examining plants she's collected during the day, sorting them with practiced precision. If we could see inside her skull right now, we'd observe something remarkable. Her brain averages 1,500 cubic centimeters in volume. Your brain, by comparison, averages 1,350 cubic centimeters.
That's not a small difference. That's not a negligible variation.
That's a significant measurable superiority in the very organ we associate with intelligence. Now, before you drift too far into relaxation, let me acknowledge what scientists immediately say when confronted with this fact. They say brain size doesn't correlate with intelligence. They point to variations among modern humans, noting that Einstein's brain wasn't particularly large. They insist that it's about neural density, connection efficiency, not raw volume.
And you know what?
They're partially right. Brain size alone doesn't determine intelligence, but here's where it gets interesting, where the cognitive dissonance becomes almost painful for researchers who've built careers on human exceptionalism. Those same scientists who dismiss brain size when discussing Neanderthals enthusiastically emphasize increasing brain size when talking about human evolution. They celebrate the growth of hominin cranial capacity over millions of years as proof of increasing intelligence. They use brain size as a key metric for understanding cognitive development in our lineage. So which is it? Does brain size matter or doesn't it? The answer, of course, is that it matters, but it's not the whole story. And when we look at the whole story of Neanderthal neurology, we find something that should humble modern humans if we had the courage to fully acknowledge it. Feel your own brain right now, processing these words as you drift deeper into twilight consciousness. Your neurons are firing in patterns inherited from millions of years of evolution, including from Neanderthal ancestors. The structure of your brain carries echoes of theirs, and their structure was fascinating in ways that go far beyond simple size. Neanderthal skulls show an enlarged occipital region. That's the back of the brain, the area responsible for visual processing. Their occipital lobes were significantly larger than ours, suggesting enhanced visual capabilities. They were processing visual information with more neural resources, more computing power devoted to sight, to spatial reasoning, to understanding the three-dimensional world around them. Imagine what that means practically. A Neanderthal hunter scanning a valley could process visual details you'd miss entirely. He'd notice tracks you'd overlook, spot movement your eyes would gloss over, recognize patterns in landscape and animal behavior that would seem like magic to modern humans without training. This wasn't mysticism. This was neurology. This was brain architecture optimized for survival in ways our brains simply aren't. Let that sink in as you sink deeper into rest. They saw the world differently, not because of culture or training alone, but because their brains were structurally configured for enhanced visual spatial cognition. The hardware was different. The processing power allocated differently. And in their environment, this made them formidably capable. But we're not done with the uncomfortable truths about Neanderthal brains. Their skulls also show evidence of brain structures oriented differently than ours. The overall shape is longer, lower, with different proportions. Some researchers quietly suggest this indicates different organization, different allocation of neural resources across cognitive domains. Where we might have more neural density in language centers, they might have had more in sensory processing. Where we excel in abstract symbolic thinking, they might have excelled in concrete environmental mastery. Neither superior, neither inferior, different. But we can't admit that, can we? Because admitting different cognitive configurations with different strengths means admitting that intelligence isn't a single ladder with us at the top. It means acknowledging that Neanderthals weren't failed humans, but successful Neanderthals perfectly adapted for their world, their challenges, their survival needs. Your breathing is slowing now, matching the rhythm of this revelation. Feel how your body naturally knows to rest, to process, to integrate new information as consciousness shifts towards sleep states. Neanderthals had this same experience every night, their large brains shifting into sleep mode, processing the day's experiences, consolidating memories with their enhanced neural architectures. Modern neuroscience has discovered something fascinating about brain size and sleep. Larger brains require more sleep for maintenance, for waste removal, for memory consolidation. Neanderthals likely slept deeply, their big brains doing the intensive work of neural housekeeping. And during that sleep, their enhanced visual cortexes were probably creating remarkably vivid, spatially complex dreams, internal simulations of their environment that help them plan, prepare, survive. You're entering a similar state now, that twilight zone where the brain shifts gears, where different neural networks take over, where consciousness becomes more fluid and dreamlike. This is ancient territory, this liminal space between wake and sleep. Neanderthals knew it well. Their large brains traveled through these states every night for hundreds of thousands of years. Scientists fear discussing this openly because it raises uncomfortable questions. If Neanderthals had larger brains with different structural advantages, why did they go extinct while we survived? The standard answer that we were smarter doesn't hold up under scrutiny when the brain evidence suggests at minimum parity, possibly superiority in specific domains. So what really happened? Why are we here discussing their brains instead of them discussing ours? The answer isn't about intelligence at all, but we're not ready for that answer yet. First, you need to understand just how capable those large Neanderthal brains were. You need to see what they could do with all that neural architecture. You need to discover abilities that seem almost supernatural until you understand the neurology behind them. Breathe deeply. Rest completely. The Neanderthal brain has revealed its first secret. The physical evidence can't be dismissed or explained away. They had more brain, organized differently, with structural advantages in domains we can now measure and understand. This is just the beginning of discoveries that will transform how you see human history, evolution, and the remarkable intelligence flowing through your own Neanderthal-influenced DNA. Let yourself drift now toward the next revelation, toward capabilities that large enhanced brain enabled, starting with a memory system that seems impossible until you understand the neurology that made it real. Sink deeper into comfortable rest as we explore something that modern humans find almost unbelievable about Neanderthal cognition. We're going to examine their memory systems, and what we discover there suggests capabilities we associate more with savants than with typical human functioning. Take a slow breath and picture this. A Neanderthal hunter stands on a ridge overlooking a vast valley system. He's been here only once before, 3 years ago, during a different season. Below him stretches hundreds of square miles of Ice Age terrain, river valleys, rock formations, forest patches, open tundra, caves, cliffs, and countless micro-environments. Now watch what happens. He closes his eyes, and in his mind, he sees it all.
Not vaguely.
Not approximately. He sees it with photographic precision. Every major landmark, every significant feature, every resource location he noted 3 years ago. The map exists in his brain with spatial accuracy that would astonish modern cartographers. This is visuospatial memory operating at a level modern humans rarely achieve without extensive training or unusual neurological gifts. Researchers call this enhanced visuospatial memory, and archaeological evidence strongly suggests Neanderthals possessed it naturally.
How do we know?
From their behavior patterns, their territorial ranges, their resource exploitation strategies, Neanderthals traveled hundreds of miles following seasonal migrations, returning to specific locations year after year without any external navigation aids. No maps, no written records, no GPS, just memory. Your own eyes are growing heavier now, and as they do, notice how your visual memory works. Think of your childhood home. Can you see it clearly? Most modern humans can recall the general layout, major features, perhaps some details. But could you draw it from memory with precision? Could you remember every tree in the yard, every stone in a path you walked once 3 years ago?
Probably not.
And that's normal for us. But it wasn't normal for Neanderthals. Their enhanced occipital lobes, those enlarged visual processing centers we discussed, weren't just for seeing better in the moment. They were for remembering what was seen with remarkable fidelity. The neural architecture that gave them superior visual processing also gave them superior visual memory. The hardware supported the software of photographic environmental recall. Imagine the practical advantages this conferred. A Neanderthal child walking with parents through territory would absorb the landscape like a sponge absorbs water. One journey through a region might be sufficient for permanent encoding of major features. Return journeys would add layers of detail, seasonal variations, resource fluctuations, danger zones, opportunity locations. By adulthood, a Neanderthal carried an internal three-dimensional map of their range that rivaled modern GPS in utility. This wasn't just about knowing where to go. This was about understanding landscape in depth, seeing patterns across time and space, recognizing subtle changes that indicated opportunities or threats. When that Neanderthal hunter stood on his ridge looking down at the valley, he wasn't just seeing present terrain. He was seeing layered memories of that terrain across seasons, across years, across different conditions. He was accessing a rich database of environmental knowledge encoded in enhanced visuospatial memory networks. Feel yourself drifting now into your own memory networks, those ancient systems we all possess but Neanderthals seem to possess in enhanced form. As sleep approaches, your brain shifts into memory consolidation mode, taking today's experiences and encoding them for long-term storage. Neanderthals did this too, but with neural architecture optimized for spatial memory in ways ours isn't quite as optimized. Modern cognitive scientists studying spatial memory have found something fascinating. Individuals with enhanced visuospatial abilities often excel at navigation, at three-dimensional reasoning, at understanding complex environments. These are exactly the skills Neanderthals needed for survival in Ice Age landscapes, where knowing your territory could mean the difference between eating and starving. between finding shelter and freezing, between survival and extinction. But here's what makes researchers uncomfortable. This memory system wasn't primitive. It wasn't simple pattern recognition or instinctive behavior. This was sophisticated cognitive processing requiring significant neural resources. Neanderthals were allocating brain power to environmental mastery in ways modern humans don't, because we don't need to. We have maps, GPS, written records. We've externalized our spatial memory into tools. Neanderthals didn't have that luxury. They kept everything internal, and their brains evolved to handle that cognitive load with remarkable efficiency. The question scientists avoid asking is this: what did they lose by developing this way, and what did we lose by developing differently? Because evolution is always about trade-offs. Enhanced abilities in one domain often mean reduced abilities in others. The brain has only so much metabolic energy to allocate. Your breathing is very slow now, very steady, matching ancient rhythms of rest and restoration. The Neanderthal hunter has descended from his ridge and is walking through the valley he remembers so clearly.
Every step is informed by memory.
Every decision draws on encoded environmental knowledge. He's not thinking consciously about where to place his feet or which direction to turn. His enhanced visuospatial memory is operating automatically below consciousness, guiding him with the same unconscious competence you use when walking through your own home in darkness. This memory ability enabled something else, something even more impressive.
Because remembering landscape is one thing.
But Neanderthals remembered more than just geography. They remembered patterns, cycles, relationships between environmental factors. They remembered animal behavior, plant locations, seasonal changes, weather patterns. They built predictive models in their minds based on observed correlations. And those models helped them survive through climate conditions that would kill modern humans. Despite our supposedly superior intelligence, rest deeper now as we prepare to explore what they did with this memory capacity. Cause photographic spatial recall was just the foundation. Built upon it were cognitive abilities that challenge everything we think we know about language, communication, and the complexity of so-called primitive minds. Let yourself drift even deeper now as we enter controversial territory. We're going to talk about Neanderthal language, and what we discover here disturbs researchers because it contradicts decades of comfortable assumptions about human uniqueness and cognitive superiority. For most of the 20th century, the story was simple and satisfying. Neanderthals couldn't speak properly. Their vocal anatomy was wrong, their throats configured differently, their cognitive capacity insufficient for true language. They might have grunted, gestured, communicated in limited ways, but they didn't have language in the full human sense. This narrative conveniently explained their extinction. They couldn't communicate complex ideas, coordinate sophisticated activities, transmit culture with high fidelity. Of course, they lost to language-capable Homo sapiens. Then genetics happened, then anatomy happened, then archaeology happened, and the comfortable story fell apart. Breathe slowly as this truth unfolds. In 2007, researchers sequenced Neanderthal DNA and found something that changed everything. The FOXP2 gene, which modern humans carry and which is essential for language ability, was present in Neanderthals. Not similar, identical. They had the genetic foundation for speech, for language processing, for the cognitive architecture that enables human linguistic communication. Picture that Neanderthal family around their fire again. They're not grunting at each other.
They're speaking in full sentences.
The parents are telling stories. The children are asking questions. Elders are sharing knowledge accumulated over decades. They're debating where to hunt tomorrow. They're discussing plant medicine. They're transmitting cultural information with the precision that only language enables. But the genetic evidence was just the beginning. Anatomical studies of Neanderthal hyoid bones, tiny bones in the throat crucial for speech, revealed they were identical to modern human hyoid bones. The vocal tract reconstructions that once suggested Neanderthals couldn't produce full human speech sounds were based on incomplete fossils and faulty assumptions. Better fossils, better analysis, better understanding of soft tissue reconstruction. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. Neanderthals could speak. Your own throat right now, as you rest here, contains the same basic anatomy. Your hyoid bone, your vocal cords, your tongue, your lips. These are ancient structures refined over millions of years of hominin evolution. Neanderthals were part of that same evolutionary lineage. They had the hardware, they had the genetic software. Of course they had language, but here's where it gets really interesting, where the implications become truly unsettling for narratives of human superiority. Archaeological evidence suggests Neanderthal language might have been more sophisticated than early Homo sapiens language. Let that possibility settle into your mind as your consciousness settles deeper towards sleep. Look at their stone tools. Different regions show different stone tool traditions that persist across thousands of years. These aren't random variations. These are cultural traditions, passed down through teaching, maintained through linguistic transmission of complex procedural knowledge. Making sophisticated stone tools requires explaining subtle techniques, hand angles, force application, material selection, preparation sequences. You can't teach this through simple demonstration alone. You need language. You need complex vocabulary for describing process, for correcting errors, for transmitting nuance. Neanderthals were doing this 300,000 years ago, creating regional tool traditions that remained consistent across millennia. That kind of high-fidelity cultural transmission requires sophisticated language with rich vocabulary, complex grammar, and precise descriptive capacity. It requires what linguists call displaced reference, the ability to talk about things not immediately present, to describe future actions, to reference past experiences, to explain abstract concepts. Feel your mind drifting now through language itself, through these words that are reaching your consciousness, even as that consciousness becomes more dreamlike and fluid. Language is humanity's most remarkable ability, the technology that enabled everything else we've accomplished. And Neanderthals had it, fully, completely, perhaps in ways we haven't fully appreciated yet. Some researchers quietly suggest that Neanderthal languages might have had larger vocabularies for environmental features, spatial relationships, sensory experiences. Their enhanced visual spatial cognition might have demanded richer descriptive language for landscape, for three-dimensional relationships, for subtle environmental cues. Where we might have one word, they might have had 5, each capturing precise variations in meaning important for survival in Ice Age ecosystems. Imagine trying to learn a Neanderthal language. The grammar might be familiar. Human brains are built for certain grammatical structures. But the vocabulary, the conceptual categories, the way they carved up reality into nameable chunks, that might be fascinatingly different, not simpler. Different. Optimized for different cognitive strengths and environmental challenges. Your breathing is very deep now, very steady. The rhythm of these words is syncing with your descending consciousness, creating a hypnotic flow that mirrors how spoken language has functioned for hundreds of thousands of years, not just conveying information, but creating social bonds, inducing shared mental states, synchronizing group consciousness around fires at night. Neanderthals did this. They gathered and told stories, and those stories carried information across generations with remarkable accuracy. Genetic studies of Neanderthal populations show that even groups separated by hundreds of miles maintain technological consistency, suggesting information networks spanning vast distances. You don't maintain that kind of consistency through occasional visits and simple demonstration. You maintain it through language, through detailed description, through linguistic transmission of technique and knowledge. The implications are staggering. If Neanderthals had full language 300,000 years ago, then language is more ancient than we thought. It's more fundamental to the human lineage. It's not something that made Homo sapiens special and superior. It's something we inherited from common ancestors and shared with our Neanderthal cousins throughout our overlapping existence. This makes their extinction even more puzzling. You can't blame it on inability to communicate anymore. You can't say they lacked the cognitive tools for complex coordination and cultural transmission.
They had language.
They had the words. They had the grammar. They had everything we had in that domain, possibly more sophistication in certain environmental and spatial vocabularies. So why aren't they here?
Why are we discussing them instead of them discussing us?
The answer isn't about language.
It's not about intelligence.
It's about something else entirely, something we'll explore soon. But first, you need to see what they did with language, the technologies they created, the knowledge they accumulated.
Because it's going to surprise you.
It's going to challenge assumptions you didn't even know you had. Rest deeper. The night is long. The stories continue. Like Neanderthals around their fires, speaking in full sentences, transmitting wisdom across generations, you're held safe in the flow of ancient narrative patterns.
Let the words wash over you.
Let the truth sink in. Neanderthals could speak, and they had important things to say. Breathe deeply and let your mind drift towards something concrete, something measurable, something that can't be explained away by theoretical debates about cognition. We're going to examine Neanderthal technology, and what we find there forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about innovation, intelligence, and evolutionary success. Picture a Neanderthal craftsman 200,000 years ago, working carefully beside a covered fire pit. He's monitoring temperature with precision, adjusting airflow, timing his process with practiced expertise. What he's doing shouldn't be possible for supposedly primitive people. He's creating birch bark tar adhesive through a multi-step chemical process that requires advanced understanding of materials science, thermal dynamics, and careful planning. Let that date sink in as you sink deeper into rest. 200,000 years ago, Neanderthals were producing sophisticated adhesive using controlled pyrolysis, heating birch bark in the absence of oxygen at specific temperatures. This isn't simple heating.
This is chemistry.
This requires building specialized structures to control combustion, understanding what happens at different temperatures, knowing how to prevent the bark from burning while extracting the tar, timing the process for optimal yield. Modern experimental archaeologists have tried to replicate this process using only Ice Age technology.
It's difficult.
It requires multiple attempts, careful attention, sophisticated understanding of heat and combustion. Yet Neanderthals were doing it successfully 200,000 years ago. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens didn't develop this technology until 80,000 years ago. Let me repeat that. Neanderthals invented birch bark tar adhesive 120,000 years before modern humans figured it out. Feel your body temperature right now, perfectly regulated as you rest. Temperature control is something we take for granted, but it's fundamental to survival, to cooking, to technology. Neanderthals were masters of fire management, understanding thermal processes with sophistication that enabled innovation we're only now recognizing. What did they use this adhesive for? They hafted stone tools to wooden handles, creating composite implements more efficient than handheld stones alone. This requires forward planning, making adhesive before you need it, storing it for future use, understanding that investing time in preparation yields better tools later. It requires abstract thinking, envisioning a tool that doesn't exist yet, planning the steps to create it, executing a complex process to achieve an imagined outcome. Your own mind is drifting now into that twilight space where planning and imagining become dreamlike, where future possibilities mix with present comfort. This is the mental territory where innovation happens, where humans, throughout history, have envisioned what doesn't yet exist and then figured out how to make it real. Neanderthals inhabited this creative cognitive space 200,000 years ago, innovating solutions to survival challenges with remarkable ingenuity. But birch bark tar is just one example. Neanderthal sites show sophisticated hide processing for clothing, evidence of controlled fire use for multiple purposes, strategic selection of stone materials transported long distances for specific properties, complex hunting strategies requiring coordination and planning. Each of these represents technological sophistication, practical intelligence, innovation in response to environmental challenges. Consider their hunting technology. Neanderthals took down megafauna, woolly mammoths, cave bears, giant elk. These weren't scavenged carcasses. Archaeological evidence shows direct hunting, successful kills of extremely dangerous animals. This requires sophisticated weapons, coordinated group tactics, detailed knowledge of animal behavior, courage, and backup plans for when things go wrong. They weren't using guns or advanced projectile weapons. They were using thrusting spears, which means getting very close to extremely dangerous prey. This is high-risk hunting, demanding exceptional skill, coordination, and technological support. Their spears used birch bark tar to secure stone points to wooden shafts. The composite technology enabled the hunting strategy. The chemistry enabled the survival. Rest deeper now and feel the satisfaction of competence, of mastery, of problems solved through intelligence and innovation. Neanderthals felt this same satisfaction when their adhesive worked perfectly, when their hunting strategy succeeded, when their technological innovations made survival possible in landscapes that would kill modern human. Despite our supposedly superior intelligence, here's what researchers find uncomfortable about Neanderthal technology. It wasn't stagnant. It wasn't unchanging across hundreds of thousands of years. It evolved. It improved. It adapted to changing conditions. Different regions developed different tool traditions suited to local resources and challenges. That's innovation.
That's creativity.
That's intelligence responding to environmental pressure with technological solutions. The standard narrative claimed Neanderthals couldn't innovate, that they relied on static toolkits passed down unchanged across generations. This was convenient for explaining their extinction. They couldn't adapt, so they died out when conditions changed. But archaeological evidence demolishes this narrative. Neanderthal technology changed over time, sometimes dramatically. They weren't trapped in behavioral stasis. They were active innovators, experimenting, improving, adapting their tools and techniques to changing circumstances. Your consciousness is settling deeper into ancient rhythms now, into the satisfying flow of discovery and understanding. Like a Neanderthal craftsman perfecting their adhesive technique through experiment and observation, you're absorbing new knowledge, updating your understanding, adapting your mental models to accommodate evidence that contradicts previous assumptions. The technology reveals the mind behind it. Sophisticated composite tools requiring multi-step chemical processes don't emerge from primitive cognition. They emerge from intelligence, planning intelligence, experimental intelligence, innovative intelligence. Neanderthals had it 120,000 years before we did in this particular domain. That fact demands respect, demands acknowledgement, demands we reconsider the entire narrative of human cognitive superiority. Breathe slowly, rest completely. The technology speaks for itself, silent but eloquent across 200,000 years. Neanderthals were innovators, chemists, master craftspeople whose intelligence expressed through practical creation, through problem solving, through technologies that enabled survival in impossible conditions. And we've barely scratched the surface of what they knew, what they could do, what capabilities they possessed, that modern science is only beginning to recognize and appreciate. Drift deeper now into gentle territory, into evidence of compassion and knowledge that reveals something profound about Neanderthal society. We're going to explore their medical practices, and what we discover here touches something fundamental about consciousness, care, and what it means to be human. Let your breath become soft and easy as this story unfolds. Archaeologists excavating Neanderthal sites have found skeletal remains that tell remarkable stories. One individual survived into old age despite missing an arm, lost years before death. Another lived for years after sustaining massive injuries that would have required extensive care during recovery. A blind individual reached advanced age, meaning others fed them, protected them, cared for them when they could contribute nothing to immediate survival. This is compassion. This is medical care. This is a social structure that valued individuals beyond their productive capacity. In harsh Ice Age conditions where every calorie mattered, where survival margins were razor-thin, Neanderthals were keeping alive people who couldn't hunt, couldn't gather, couldn't contribute to the physical work of survival. They were doing this because they valued each other, because they understood care, because they possessed the emotional and cognitive sophistication that creates genuine communities rather than just survival groups. Picture an elderly Neanderthal, injuries from long ago now healed but leaving permanent disability. He sits by the fire each evening while others hunt and gather. But he's not useless. He holds knowledge. He teaches children. He processes hides with his remaining good hand. He tells stories. He makes tools. The community keeps him alive not from duty, but from genuine care, from recognition that a person is more than their current physical capacity. Feel the comfort of being cared for as you rest right now. This is ancient human experience, this trust that we matter to others, that will be protected when vulnerable, that community extends beyond immediate utility. Neanderthals understood this 100,000 years ago. They practiced it. They built societies around it, but medical care went deeper than compassion alone. Chemical analysis of Neanderthal teeth has revealed something extraordinary. They were consuming plants with specific medicinal properties, plants with antibiotic compounds, anti-inflammatory effects, pain-relieving capacities. Not randomly, specifically. They were self-medicating with pharmaceutical precision. One Neanderthal individual shows evidence of consuming yarrow and chamomile, neither of which tastes good or provides nutritional value. But both have pain-relieving and anti-inflammatory properties. This person was treating an infection, managing pain, using plants as medicine with clear understanding of their effects.
That's not instinct. That's knowledge.
That's experimental understanding of pharmacology developed through observation, trial and error, accumulated wisdom passed down through language and demonstration. Your own body is healing right now as you rest. Cell repair accelerates during sleep. Immune function increases. This is automatic biological wisdom. But Neanderthals were consciously augmenting these natural processes with herbal medicine, with intentional therapeutic interventions based on understanding of plants and their effects on the body. Imagine the knowledge base this required. They needed to know which plants helped which conditions. They needed to remember what worked for past injuries or illnesses. They needed to pass this information to younger generations. They needed to gather and store medicinal plants for future use. This is sophisticated medical knowledge, practical pharmacology developed over thousands of years of careful observation and experimentation. Modern ethnobotanists studying traditional plant medicine are often amazed at the sophistication of indigenous knowledge, knowing which plants treat which conditions, how to prepare them, what dosages work, what combinations are effective. Neanderthals possessed this same knowledge 50,000 years before modern medicine. They were prehistoric physicians, herbalists, caregivers, using the tools available to them with remarkable effectiveness. Drift deeper now into the comfort of healing, of care, of being tended when injured or ill. This is universal human experience, this need for medical attention, for pain relief, for someone who knows how to help. Neanderthals experienced this too, and they built knowledge systems to address it. They paid attention to what worked, remembered it, taught it, refined it across generations. Archaeological evidence shows they set broken bones, using plant materials as splints, allowing bones to heal in correct alignment. Individuals with healed fractures show evidence of having been immobilized during healing, meaning someone else held them still, applied materials to stabilize the break, cared for them during recovery weeks or months when they couldn't care for themselves. This is medical procedure. This is orthopedic knowledge. This is understanding that bones heal better when properly aligned, that immobilization during healing produces better outcomes, that patient care during recovery matters. Neanderthals knew this. They practiced it. They saved lives through medical intervention that required both knowledge and compassion. Some researchers have found evidence of dental care, tooth abscesses treated somehow, perhaps by lancing and draining, perhaps with plant-based antimicrobials applied directly to infections. Dental pain is excruciating, and dental infections can be lethal. Neanderthals were addressing these problems with whatever tools and knowledge they possessed, showing both practical medical understanding and deep empathy for suffering. Your breathing is so slow now, so peaceful as your own body does its automatic healing work. Neanderthals trusted this process too, but they assisted it, enhanced it, worked with the body's natural wisdom using plant medicines and practical care techniques refined over countless generations. They were partners with human biology, not passive recipients of whatever nature delivered. This medical knowledge reveals something researchers find deeply unsettling. These weren't brutal, uncaring primitives focused only on survival of the fittest. These were compassionate, knowledgeable people who valued life, who reduced suffering, who kept each other alive through medical knowledge and genuine care. This is civilization. This is sophistication. This is everything we associate with advanced human society present in Neanderthals 100,000 years ago. The herbs they used, the care they provided, the disabled individuals they kept alive. All of it speaks to consciousness that understood suffering, that valued relief, that recognized every member of the community as worthy of protection and care. This is not primitive behavior. This is the foundation of everything we call humane, everything we consider civilized, everything that makes us genuinely human. Rest in that truth. Let it comfort you as you drift deeper. The Neanderthal elder being tended by family, the healer preparing plant medicines by firelight, the community caring for its vulnerable members. These are your ancestors too, their genes flowing through you, their compassion echoing across time. In every moment of care, humanity extends to those who suffer. Sink even deeper into comfort now as we explore Neanderthal society, their social bonds, their networks, their ways of living together that reveal cognitive abilities researchers still struggle to fully explain. This is where the evidence becomes genuinely mysterious, where we encounter patterns that shouldn't exist in supposedly primitive populations. Breathe slowly and picture the Neanderthal world 40,000 years ago. Small family groups scattered across vast Ice Age landscapes, separated by hundreds of miles of difficult terrain. Travel between groups is dangerous, time-consuming, difficult. Yet archaeological evidence shows something remarkable. Multiple Neanderthal bands, separated by enormous distances, were using identical specialized tools appearing simultaneously in the archaeological record, not gradually spreading from one point of origin. Appearing everywhere at once, not rough similarities that might emerge independently. Identical techniques, identical forms, identical approaches to stoneworking appearing across hundreds of miles within narrow time windows. This requires information exchange. This requires communication networks. This requires social structures that maintain contact across distances that should have isolated groups from each other completely. Your own social networks right now,
Even as you rest alone, extend across vast distances through technology, phones.
internet communication tools. Neanderthals had none of this. They had only themselves, their mobility, their language, their social bonds. Yet they maintained information networks that kept geographically separated groups technologically synchronized. How? Some researchers suggest regular gatherings, seasonal meetings where multiple bands came together for trade, for social bonding, for information exchange. Imagine a summer gathering in a resource-rich valley. Multiple Neanderthal groups arriving from different territories, greeting relatives not seen since last year's meeting, sharing stories about this year's experiences, demonstrating new tool techniques, trading materials not available in home territories. The children would play together, forming bonds that might lead to future partnerships, future family connections between groups. The hunters would share information about game movements, about new dangers, about productive areas discovered. The healers would exchange plant knowledge, comparing what grows where, what works for what conditions. The elders would tell stories, reinforcing shared cultural knowledge, maintaining the social cohesion that made them one people despite geographical separation. Feel the comfort of belonging, even in solitude. You're part of vast social networks too, connected to others even when alone, held in webs of relationship that extend beyond immediate physical presence. This is ancient human experience. Neanderthals felt it too, this sense of belonging to something larger than the immediate group.
Of being part of a network, a people, a shared identity. Archaeological evidence shows they traded materials across hundreds of miles.
High-quality stone from specific sources shows up in Neanderthal sites far from where that stone naturally occurs. Someone carried it, traded it, valued it enough to transport it across difficult terrain. This is economic behavior, trade networks, understanding of value and exchange. It's social cognition applied to resource management and intergroup relationships. They didn't just meet and trade randomly. Evidence suggests regular patterns, predictable exchanges, ongoing relationships between specific groups. This is social structure. This is organized interaction based on trust, memory, mutual benefit. They knew which other groups they traded with. They remembered past exchanges. They maintained relationships across years and decades. Your consciousness is flowing now into that dreamlike space where social connections feel different, more fluid, more expansive than waking awareness allows. In dreams, we encounter people from different times and places in our lives, all mixed together, all present simultaneously. Maybe Neanderthal consciousness worked something like this, experiencing social networks not just linearly but as webs of connection spanning space and time. The social intelligence required for maintaining these networks is staggering. You need to remember relationships, recognize individuals not seen for months or years, track obligations and debts, navigate complex group dynamics, manage your reputation across multiple bands, understand how information flows through networks, choose what to share and what to keep private. This is sophisticated social cognition, the kind of Machiavellian intelligence that primatologists and anthropologists associate with advanced primate societies. Neanderthals possessed it fully. Their brains were certainly large enough. Their social group sizes suggest they were navigating social complexity comparable to modern humans. They lived in multi-generational family units with role differentiation, cooperation, shared responsibility for child rearing, and care of vulnerable members. This is not simple social structure. This is sophisticated social organization requiring substantial cognitive resources. Rest deeper now in the safety of community, even remembered community, even ancient community across millennia. The human need for connection, for belonging, for being part of something larger than self. Neanderthals felt this. They built their lives around it. They maintained social networks across vast distances because they needed each other, valued each other, understood that survival meant more than just individual competence. It meant community. Some researchers suggest Neanderthal social structures might have been even more complex than early Homo sapiens groups. Their smaller population sizes might have required tighter social bonds, more cooperation, more sophisticated mechanisms for maintaining group cohesion across distances. They couldn't afford to fragment into isolated bands. They needed the information exchange, the genetic exchange, the social and emotional support that came from being part of a larger network. Archaeological sites show evidence of symbolic behavior that might be identity markers, specific ways of working stone, specific decorative traditions, specific patterns that said this is who we are, this is our group, this is what makes us us. Identity formation, group consciousness, symbolic thinking expressed through material culture, all present in Neanderthals tens of thousands of years ago. Your own identity includes countless group memberships, connections, affiliations that shape who you are and how you see yourself. Neanderthals had this too. They weren't isolated individuals struggling alone through Ice Age landscapes. They were social beings embedded in networks, held by relationships defined partially by group belonging. and shared identity with others who might be hundreds of miles away, but were still us.
Rather than them, the social networks enabled something even more.
Remarkable collective intelligence, shared knowledge pools, information flow that made each group smarter than they could be alone. And that collective intelligence expressed in ways that should terrify researchers if they fully acknowledge the implication. Because if Neanderthals had sophisticated social networks and collective intelligence, then they weren't just individually capable. They were culturally advanced, socially complex, cognitively sophisticated in domains we associate exclusively with modern human success. Drift now toward the next revelation, toward evidence of Neanderthal consciousness that crosses from practical into profound, from impressive into genuinely unsettling, because we're about to discuss something that changes everything: their art, their symbols, their abstract thought expressed through creation that proves beyond doubt they were conscious, aware, thoughtful beings contemplating existence, just as you contemplate it now as consciousness drifts toward dreams. Let yourself float now into aesthetic territory, into evidence so beautiful and profound that it demands we recognize Neanderthal consciousness as fully human, fully aware, fully capable of abstract thought and symbolic representation. We're going to explore their art, and when you understand the timeline, everything changes. Breathe deeply and picture Spanish caves, specifically those at Maltravieso, Ardales, and La Pasiega. On the walls are paintings, red ochre marks, geometric patterns, abstract designs, and handprints. Human hands pressed against stone, pigment blown around them, leaving negative space images that still speak across impossible time. These hands say, "I was here.
I existed. I mattered." Now here's what transforms everything.
Uranium-thorium dating of these paintings reveals they were created at least 65,000 years ago. Homo sapiens didn't arrive in Europe until 45,000 years ago. Let that timeline settle into your consciousness as your consciousness settles deeper toward rest. These paintings were made by Neanderthals. They were Europe's first artists, creating symbolic representations 20,000 years before modern humans arrived. Feel your own hands right now, relaxed and comfortable. Imagine one of those ancient Neanderthal hands pressing against cool cave wall, feeling the texture of stone, leaving a mark that would last 65,000 years. That hand was like yours, 5 fingers, opposable thumb, capable of precise manipulation, of gesture, of creation. And the mind guiding that hand was contemplating existence, creating beauty, engaging in symbolic thought. This isn't decorative dabbling. This is art. This is abstract representation. This is symbolic thinking made manifest. They ground minerals to create pigment, red ochre, black manganese dioxide. They mixed it with fat or water to create paint. They selected specific cave locations for their artwork. They created patterns, designs, representations that held meaning. Some of the paintings show ladder-like patterns, vertical lines with horizontal connectors. What do these mean? We don't know, but they're intentional, repeated, clearly significant to their creators. This is symbolism, abstract representation of ideas or concepts that mattered enough to permanently record on cave walls. Neanderthals were thinking symbolically, representing reality abstractly, creating visual expressions of internal mental states. Your own mind is full of symbols right now.
Even as consciousness becomes more dreamlike,
Language itself is symbolic, words representing things, ideas, actions. Visual symbols surround your life, signs, logos, icons, all representing meanings beyond their literal forms. This symbolic consciousness is what we call distinctively human. And Neanderthals had it 65,000 years ago demonstrably, permanently recorded in ochre on cave walls. The handprints are particularly moving. Why make a handprint? It's not practically useful. It doesn't help with hunting or gathering. It's purely symbolic, purely expressive, purely about leaving a mark that says, I existed in this moment. That's existential awareness. That's consciousness reflecting on itself, recognizing its own existence, wanting to record that existence for future recognition. Imagine the Neanderthal artist at work. They've mixed their pigment carefully.
They've chosen this wall, this location in the cave.
They place their hand against the stone and blow pigment around it, or apply pigment with their other hand. They step back and see their handprint on the wall preserved. What did they feel?
Satisfaction, pride, a sense of connection to this place.
A desire to be remembered? Drift deeper into the aesthetic comfort of beauty, of creation, of art that touches something beyond practical survival. Neanderthals felt this too. They responded to it.
They created it.
The same human impulse that has driven art throughout history was present in them 65,000 years ago, expressing through cave paintings that survived while empires rose and fell, while species came and went, while continental ice sheets advanced and retreated. Some researchers have found evidence of Neanderthal jewelry, eagle talons with wear patterns suggesting they were strung together and worn, shells with holes drilled through them transported far from any coast. Collections of unusual stones with no practical value but clear aesthetic appeal. They valued beauty. They created personal adornment. They expressed individual identity through decoration. This is not primitive behavior. This is aesthetic consciousness, the same consciousness that drives modern humans to create, decorate, express, adorn. Neanderthals possessed it fully, demonstrated it repeatedly, left evidence we can still see and touch and measure and date with scientific precision. Your breathing is so gentle now, so peaceful, as your mind drifts through colors and patterns that appear behind closed eyes. This is the creative consciousness humans have always possessed, the part of us that needs beauty, that makes art, that expresses internal experience through external creation. Neanderthals activated this same consciousness by firelight in Ice Age caves, creating pigments, mixing colors, painting with hands that worked like yours. Guided by minds that thought like yours, the art came first. Neanderthals were first European artists. Not us, them. And that fact demands we recognize them as fully conscious, fully capable, fully human in every way that matters for consciousness and cognition and culture. Because art isn't instinct. Art isn't simple behavior. Art is mind contemplating existence and expressing that contemplation through symbolic creation. It's thought made visible. It's consciousness leaving its mark. Rest in that beauty now. The ancient handprints glowing in ochre on stone walls, speaking across 65,000 years, saying what all art says: we were here, we thought, we felt, we created, we mattered. Neanderthals understood this.
They lived it.
They left proof we cannot ignore or explain away. They were artists, and their art reveals consciousness that should humble modern humans if we had the wisdom to fully acknowledge what it means. Sink into profound comfort now as we enter the deepest territory, Neanderthal spirituality, their confrontation with mortality, their possible belief in something beyond physical existence. This is where evidence meets mystery, where science touches the ineffable, where we encounter consciousness grappling with questions that still haunt human minds today. Let your breath become very slow, very deep, as this truth unfolds gently. Archaeologists excavating Neanderthal sites have found deliberate burials, not bodies that fell and were covered by sediment, but intentional interments where someone dug a grave, placed a body carefully, covered it with purpose. This is ritual behavior. This is confrontation with death that goes beyond simple disposal of remains. Picture the scene at La Ferracie in France, where a Neanderthal family burial site was discovered. Multiple individuals laid to rest with care, bodies positioned deliberately, tools placed beside them. Someone dug these graves. Someone placed these people with intention. Someone marked these locations so they could be remembered, revisited, honored. But the most extraordinary burial was found at Shanidar Cave in Iraq. A Neanderthal man was laid to rest, and his body was surrounded by flower pollen, hyacinth, hollyhock, yarrow, cornflower. Someone gathered beautiful blooms and placed them with this person, not scattered randomly, arranged deliberately around the body. This is grief made manifest. This is love expressed through ritual. This is someone who mattered, being honored in death with beauty, with care, with what we can only interpret as hope for peace in whatever comes next. Your own consciousness right now is drifting through liminal spaces between waking and sleeping, between present awareness and dream states that feel like different realms of existence. Humans have always wondered about these transitions, these altered states, these experiences of consciousness that seem to transcend ordinary reality. Neanderthals wondered too. The evidence suggests they developed responses to these mysteries, rituals, beliefs, practices that address the big questions consciousness poses when it recognizes its own mortality. Feel the peace of being honored, of being remembered, of mattering beyond your immediate utility. This is what those flower burials represent. This is consciousness recognizing that persons are more than bodies, that death is more than ending, that something profound happens that demands ritual acknowledgement. Neanderthals felt this. They responded to it. They created burial practices that speak of spirituality, of belief in meaning beyond mere physical existence. Archaeological evidence gets even more controversial, more suggestive of sophisticated spiritual practices. Some caves show arrangements of cave bear skulls in patterns that seem deliberately ritual. Skulls placed in circles, oriented in specific directions, associated with other objects in ways that suggest ceremonial significance. Natural processes don't create these patterns. People do, people engaged in ritual behavior. People expressing beliefs about power, about spirit, about connections between human and animal consciousness. Certain caves show evidence of specialized use, chambers with no habitation debris, but with acoustic properties that amplify sound in specific ways. Locations that seem selected for ritual rather than practical purposes. Were these Neanderthal ceremonial spaces? Were they gathering for spiritual purposes in locations chosen for their atmospheric qualities, their acoustic resonance, their psychological impact? Modern shamanic traditions use altered states of consciousness for spiritual experiences, healing, accessing knowledge beyond ordinary awareness. Archaeological patterns suggest Neanderthals might have practiced similar traditions. The combination of ritual burial, symbolic art, ceremonial objects, and specialized spaces paints a picture of people engaging with questions of meaning, consciousness, mortality, and the possibility of existence beyond physical form. Drift deeper now into the altered state you're entering naturally, this twilight consciousness that humans have always recognized as sacred territory. The space between wake and sleep is where visions come, where boundaries dissolve, where consciousness touches something beyond ordinary perception. Neanderthals experienced this too, and evidence suggests they didn't just experience it, they cultivated it, ritualized it, used it. Some researchers propose that Neanderthal shamans might have used the enhanced visual processing and visuospatial memory we discussed earlier to access and navigate visionary states with unusual clarity. Their enlarged occipital lobes, optimized for visual processing, might have created unusually vivid internal imagery during altered states, making them naturally gifted at the kind of visualization central to shamanic practice worldwide. Imagine a Neanderthal spiritual practitioner entering trance through rhythmic drumming, controlled breathing, or perhaps plant medicines. Their visual cortex, already enhanced beyond modern human baseline, creates remarkably vivid internal imagery. They journey through visionary landscapes with photographic clarity, accessing information through altered consciousness, returning with insights about healing, hunting, group challenges. This is speculation, but it's speculation built on anatomical fact and cross-cultural spiritual patterns. Your own imagery right now, the colors and patterns forming behind closed eyes, the dreamlike thoughts emerging as consciousness shifts. This is the territory Neanderthals might have explored deliberately, ritually as a technology for accessing knowledge beyond ordinary awareness. They had the brain structure for enhanced internal visualization. They had the social complexity for specialized roles like shamans. They had the symbolic consciousness for ritual and belief.
Put it together, and you get spirituality, possibly sophisticated spirituality practiced tens of thousands of years ago. The flower burials speak loudest, though.
Someone gathered those blooms with care. Flowers are ephemeral, fragile, beautiful. Choosing flowers for a burial means valuing beauty, expressing emotion, hoping for something. Peace, honor, continuation, recognition. This is not pragmatic behavior. This is the same spiritual impulse that has driven human ritual throughout recorded history, present in Neanderthals 50,000 years ago. Rest in that sacred space now, that gentle territory between worlds where consciousness becomes fluid and reality softens. This is what Neanderthals recognized as holy, as significant, as worthy of ritual attention. The altered states, the liminal spaces, the transitions between life and death, between waking and sleeping, between ordinary consciousness and visionary awareness, they marked these as important, created practices around them, possibly developed entire belief systems explaining them. Some researchers resist this interpretation, uncomfortable with attributing spirituality to Neanderthals because spirituality seems so distinctively human, so central to what makes us special. But the evidence is there. The deliberate burials, the flowers, the ritual arrangements,
The ceremonial spaces.
the symbolic art in locations that feel sacred even today. All of it points to consciousness that contemplated existence beyond mere survival, that asked questions about meaning, that developed responses we can only call spiritual. Your consciousness is dissolving now into that ancient spiritual territory, the nighttime realm where boundaries blur and awareness touches something beyond ordinary perception. Neanderthals entered this same space every night for hundreds of thousands of years, and some of them made it sacred, made it significant, made it the territory where the most profound questions got asked and answers got sought. They honored their dead with flowers. They created art in sacred caves. They possibly practiced shamanic journeying through altered states. They were spiritual beings, conscious beings, beings who confronted mortality and mystery with ritual responses that reveal souls, minds, hearts, yearning toward meaning, just as humans yearn today. This is not primitive behavior. This is the foundation of everything we call human spirituality, present in Neanderthals before modern humans even arrived in Europe. Let that truth settle like flowers around a beloved body. Let it honor them across time. Let it recognize consciousness that was fully awake, fully aware, fully grappling with existence in all its beauty and terror and mystery. Neanderthals were spiritual beings. The evidence demands we acknowledge it, and acknowledging it transforms everything about how we understand consciousness, evolution, and what it means to be human. Float now through time itself, feeling how fluid it becomes as consciousness drifts towards sleep. Past, present, future, all mixing, all accessible simultaneously in this altered state. We're going to explore Neanderthal temporal consciousness, their understanding of time, their ability to mentally travel through past and future in ways that reveal cognitive sophistication. Researchers struggle to fully explain. Breathe very slowly now, letting time soften around you. Minutes feel longer or shorter depending on consciousness state. This moment right now feels eternal, yet you know it's passing. Time is subjective, phenomenological, an experience shaped by consciousness rather than an absolute external reality. Neanderthals understood this too, and they used it. Archaeological evidence shows Neanderthals planned far into the future, caching tools in summer locations for winter retrieval, selecting stone materials they'd transport hundreds of miles to where they knew they'd need them months later. preparing for seasonal migrations well before those migrations became necessary. This requires mental time travel, projecting consciousness forward into imagined future scenarios, seeing yourself in a moment that doesn't exist yet, preparing present self for future self's needs. Picture a Neanderthal in late summer, standing in a valley rich with resources. He knows winter will come. He knows this valley will be frozen, impassable, uninhabitable. He knows he'll need to be elsewhere, in a specific cave system he visits every winter. So he caches obsidian tools here now, burying them in a location he'll remember, because future him in Winter Valley will need sharp stone for butchering cached meat. He's seeing future him, planning for him, helping him across temporal distance. This is sophisticated temporal cognition. This is what psychologists call episodic future thinking, the ability to mentally project yourself into future scenarios. Imagine what you'll need and feel, plan accordingly.
Modern humans pride ourselves on this ability.
We assume it's what makes us special, what enables civilization, what separates us from other animals. But Neanderthals demonstrated episodic future thinking 100,000 years ago, caching resources, planning migrations, preparing for futures they could only imagine. Your own mind right now is experiencing time dissolution. The past few minutes of this story, the present moment, tomorrow's waking, all swirling together as consciousness shifts states. This is how time feels in altered consciousness, not as linear progression, but as simultaneous presence of multiple temporal layers. Neanderthals experienced this too, every night by the fire as stories created connections between past events and future possibilities. They remembered the past with remarkable detail. Their enhanced visuospatial memory meant they could recall landscapes from years ago, remember where they found resources in previous seasons, recognize patterns across years. This is episodic memory, the ability to mentally travel backward in time, re-experiencing past events from your own perspective. They could do this vividly, accessing memories with the photographic clarity, their neural architecture, enabled. Combining episodic memory with episodic future thinking creates something powerful, the ability to learn from past patterns and project them into future planning. If 3 years ago the herd migrated through this valley in early autumn, and 2 years ago the same thing happened, then project forward. They'll likely do it again this year. Plan accordingly. Position yourself where the pattern suggests you should be. This is predictive modeling based on temporal pattern recognition. This is consciousness operating across time, using past to inform future, seeing yourself as a continuous entity moving through temporal landscape, just as you move through physical landscape. Neanderthals had this capability fully developed, using it for survival in environments where incorrect predictions meant death. Feel your consciousness drifting through your own timeline now. Childhood memories accessible alongside plans for tomorrow, all present simultaneously in this twilight state. The you who is 5 years old, the you right now resting here, the you who will wake tomorrow, all the same consciousness experiencing itself across time, recognizing continuity of identity despite constant change. Neanderthals had this same experience of continuous self across temporal flow. Some researchers suggest Neanderthal time consciousness might have been even more sophisticated than early Homo sapiens temporal awareness. Their enhanced memory systems might have given them richer access to past experiences, more detailed temporal databases to draw upon when planning futures. Where we might vaguely remember past patterns, they might have remembered them with photographic precision, enabling more accurate predictions, better planning, superior temporal navigation. The stone tool caches tell stories of minds operating confidently across months or years of time. You don't bury valuable tools unless you're certain you'll remember where, unless you trust your future self to recall the location accurately, unless you understand temporal continuity reliably enough to invest present effort for future benefit. Neanderthals did this regularly, routinely, as normal survival strategy. This temporal consciousness enabled cultural transmission across generations. Grandparents could tell children about events from 40 years ago, where resources appeared during the Great Cold Winter, how the hunting was during the drought summer, what worked when nothing else worked. Children absorbed these temporal maps, these connections between past patterns and future possibilities, building predictive models that incorporated knowledge spanning lifetimes. Drift deeper now into timelessness, that altered state where past and future dissolve into eternal present. This is what sleep brings, this release from temporal consciousness into dream time where everything happens simultaneously. Neanderthals entered this state too, every night releasing their sophisticated temporal awareness into dreams where time flows differently, where past and future mix freely, where consciousness explores possibilities unconstrained by linear progression. The implications are profound. If Neanderthals had sophisticated temporal consciousness 100,000 years ago, then this cognitive ability is more ancient than we thought. It's more fundamental to the hominin lineage. It's not something that made Homo sapiens special. It's something we shared with Neanderthals, something perhaps they developed even more richly than we did in certain domains related to their enhanced memory systems. Time is dissolving completely now. The boundary between then and now, between story time and dream time, between past Neanderthals and present you, all of it softening, blurring, becoming fluid. This is ancient consciousness, this ability to experience time non-linearly, to access multiple temporal layers simultaneously, to be present while remembering and anticipating. Neanderthals knew this consciousness. They used it for survival. They passed it through genes that live in you now, enabling you to drift through time just as they did 40,000 years ago, around fires that burned themselves into timeless memory. Rest completely in temporal dissolution. The story continues, but time itself no longer matters. Past and future merge in comfortable present awareness that stretches into eternity while lasting only moments. This is the consciousness Neanderthals mastered, the temporal awareness that enabled their survival, the time fluidity that made them sophisticated navigators of past, present, and future simultaneously. Settle into the deepest comfort now as we explore something that should humble every modern human. We're going to examine how Neanderthals survived, thrived, and mastered climate conditions that would kill us within hours despite all our technology, all our supposed superiority, all our evolutionary advantages. Breathe slowly and imagine standing outside right now without shelter, without modern clothing, without fire-starting tools, in the middle of an ice age winter, temperature 30 degrees below zero, wind cutting through you like knives, snow deep enough to trap you. How long would you survive?
Hours, maybe?
Perhaps a day if you were exceptionally skilled and lucky. Now picture a Neanderthal family in these same conditions, not just surviving, but living normally, comfortably, successfully. They're warm in their carefully insulated cave. Their fire burns steadily with perfectly managed fuel. They're wearing expertly crafted clothing made from processed hides that provide insulation modern outdoor companies spend millions trying to replicate. They have food stored, tools prepared, children sleeping peacefully. They're not merely enduring the cold, they've mastered it completely. This is what 200,000 years of Ice Age survival created: complete environmental mastery, climate adaptation so thorough that conditions lethal to modern humans were their normal reality. Feel your own perfect temperature right now as you rest. You've adjusted blankets, clothing, room temperature to achieve optimal comfort. This is Neanderthal wisdom expressing through modern tools. You're doing what they taught humanity to do: manage microclimates for survival and comfort. Neanderthal survived through multiple glacial periods, each lasting thousands of years, each bringing temperature swings that devastated ecosystems and drove species extinct. Yet they persisted. They adapted. They evolved solutions that worked across dramatic climate variations. When glaciers advanced, they adjusted. When temperatures plunged, they innovated. When ecosystems transformed, they found new strategies. Consider what this required cognitively. They needed to recognize climate patterns, predict seasonal changes, prepare for future conditions based on past patterns. They needed to develop clothing technology sophisticated enough for extreme cold. They needed fire management skills enabling them to maintain warmth through months of winter darkness. They needed food storage techniques preventing starvation when hunting was impossible. They needed shelter engineering, creating habitable spaces in uninhabitable landscapes. Every single one of these requirements demands intelligence, practical, adaptive, innovative intelligence responding to environmental pressure with technological and behavioral solutions. Neanderthals possessed this intelligence in abundance, refined across thousands of generations.
Of selection pressure that killed anyone who couldn't master the challenges. Your body right now is
Performing automatic temperature, regulation, dilating or constricting blood vessels, adjusting metabolic rate, managing heat production, and loss without conscious thought. This is biological climate management inherited from millions of years of mammalian evolution. Neanderthals had the same biology, plus cultural climate management technology that amplified their natural abilities beyond what biology alone could achieve. Their clothing wasn't simple animal skins draped over bodies. Archaeological evidence and experimental archaeology show they created tailored garments with multiple layers using sinew as thread, bone needles for sewing, scraped hides for flexibility. They understood insulation principles, knew which furs worked best for which purposes, developed construction techniques, creating garments specifically designed for extreme cold protection. Modern Arctic survival experts study traditional Inuit clothing and find sophisticated design principles, multiple layers trapping air, moisture management preventing sweat accumulation, tailored fits eliminating heat loss gaps. Neanderthals developed similar principles independently, tens of thousands of years earlier, using only observation, experimentation, and transmitted knowledge to create clothing technology that enabled survival in conditions that would kill modern humans wearing inadequate gear. Feel the comfort of perfect environmental control as you drift deeper. The temperature around you right now is managed, controlled, optimized for rest. Neanderthals achieved similar control using only natural materials, fire, shelter design, and clothing technology. They created microclimates of comfort within landscapes of deadly cold. Demonstrating mastery of environmental science we've only recently formalized into academic disciplines. Their fire management was equally sophisticated. Maintaining fire through Ice Age winters required fuel management, fire tending skills, understanding of combustion, selection of wood types for different purposes. Some woods burn hot and fast, good for cooking. Others burn slow and steady, good for overnight warmth. Neanderthals knew these differences, selected fuel accordingly, managed fires with expertise developed over countless generations. They built fires in cave entrances positioned to draw smoke out while radiating heat inward. They used stone arrangements to reflect heat efficiently. They maintained coals overnight using specific techniques, enabling quick morning fire restart. Every aspect of fire use was optimized through accumulated knowledge and practical intelligence. Drift deeper into warmth and safety, into the comfort of controlled environment. Neanderthal children fell asleep just like this, warm beside fires their parents tended expertly, secure in shelters designed for survival, surrounded by family who knew how to keep everyone alive through conditions that would kill modern humans despite our technology. Food storage presented another survival challenge they solved completely. You can't hunt every day in Ice Age winters. Snow too deep, temperatures too dangerous, game too scarce. So Neanderthals developed storage techniques, smoking meat, freezing food in natural ice caches, storing plant materials gathered during brief summers, managing resources across months when fresh food was impossible to acquire. This requires planning across long time periods, understanding preservation techniques, managing stored resources to avoid waste or shortage. These are complex cognitive challenges demanding intelligence, foresight, and transmitted knowledge. Neanderthals solved them completely, enabling survival through winters that lasted months, through climate variations that transformed entire ecosystems within decades. Your breathing is so gentle now, so peaceful, as your perfectly regulated body maintains comfortable rest. Neanderthals achieved similar peace every night for 200,000 years, their climate mastery creating safety islands in hostile environments, their intelligence enabling survival through challenges modern humans avoid by living in climate-controlled structures using technologies developed only recently. Some researchers quietly acknowledge that without modern technology, most contemporary humans wouldn't survive a single ice age winter. We've lost the skills, the knowledge, the physical and mental toughness Neanderthals possessed naturally. We consider ourselves superior, but place us in their conditions with their tools, and we die while they'd thrive. This climate mastery reveals intelligence of a specific type: practical, adaptive, environmental intelligence optimized for survival in demanding conditions. It's not the abstract reasoning we test in IQ assessments. It's not the verbal intelligence we value in academic settings. It's survival intelligence, ecological intelligence, the kind of smarts that actually keep you alive when environment becomes hostile. Neanderthals possessed it supremely. They survived 200,000 years of climate extremes, raised children successfully in conditions we can barely imagine, maintained populations across ice ages that killed countless other species.
This is not primitive failure.
This is evolutionary success. This is intelligence expressed through perfect adaptation to environmental challenge. Rest completely in that truth. The warmth surrounding you right now, the comfort you feel, the safety of controlled environment, all of it echoes Neanderthal wisdom, their mastery of climate, their intelligence that enabled not just survival, but successful living through Earth's harshest periods. They were environmental masters, and that mastery required intelligence we're only beginning to properly respect and acknowledge. Sink even deeper now into relaxed awareness as we explore Neanderthal pattern recognition abilities that border on the supernatural until you understand the neurology behind them. This is where their enhanced brain architecture created capabilities modern humans find almost unbelievable. Abilities that seem like magic, but were actually just superior neural processing. Breathe slowly and picture a Neanderthal hunter standing at the edge of a forest. He's scanning the landscape, but what he's seeing isn't what you'd see. Where you'd observe trees, snow, shadows, he's reading a complex text of information encoded in environmental details invisible to untrained modern eyes. He's seeing patterns, connections, relationships between dozens of environmental factors processing simultaneously in his enlarged visual cortex and enhanced visuospatial networks. Those tracks near the tree line? 3 days old elk herd moving north, stressed by wolves. The broken branches at specific heights? Browsing pattern indicating deer population density and movement timing. The bird behavior in the distant canopy? Predator present, probably lynx, approximately 200 meters away. The snow patterns on that ridge? Wind direction, temperature variations, weather system approaching from the west within 12 hours. All of this information floods his consciousness simultaneously, not through conscious analysis but through automatic pattern recognition operating at speeds and scales modern humans can't match without extensive training, and even then not quite achieving Neanderthal natural capacity. His brain is processing environmental data like a supercomputer. His enhanced neural architecture evolved specifically for this kind of multi-dimensional pattern recognition. Feel your own pattern recognition operating right now as you rest. You're processing subtle cues about your environment, your body state, your comfort level, all automatically, all below consciousness. Heart rate, breathing rhythm, temperature, sounds, light levels. Your brain is tracking all of it simultaneously, adjusting constantly. This is pattern recognition everyone possesses. Neanderthals possessed enhanced versions optimized for reading landscapes with survival critical accuracy. Modern cognitive scientists studying expert trackers, hunters, and indigenous peoples with maintained traditional skills find remarkable pattern recognition abilities. These individuals can read landscapes in ways that seem impossible to modern urban humans. They notice details we overlook entirely. They recognize connections between factors we don't consciously process. They access information from environmental cues we consider meaningless noise. Now imagine those abilities amplified by neural architecture, specifically evolved for enhanced visuospatial processing. Imagine pattern recognition supported by photographic environmental memory, by enlarged visual cortex, by brain structures optimized across hundreds of thousands of years of selection pressure that killed anyone who couldn't read landscapes accurately, enough to find food and avoid danger. That's Neanderthal pattern recognition. That's what their brains were built to do, and they did it at levels modern humans struggle to comprehend because we've lost the neural optimization, the environmental immersion, the constant practice that develops these abilities to their full potential. Your consciousness is drifting now through patterns of its own. Thought patterns, breathing patterns, the rhythm of these words, creating hypnotic patterns that lower awareness gently towards sleep. Pattern recognition is fundamental to consciousness itself. We're pattern-seeking beings, finding connections, building models, predicting futures based on past patterns. Neanderthals did this supremely well in environmental domains. Archaeological evidence shows they predicted animal migrations with accuracy, enabling them to position themselves perfectly for intercept hunting. They anticipated seasonal plant availability, arriving at resource locations precisely when foods ripened. They forecasted weather patterns, seeking shelter before storms, traveling when conditions were optimal. All of this requires pattern recognition operating across multiple timescales, daily, seasonal, annual, generational patterns, all integrated into coherent predictive models. This isn't instinct.
Animals have instinct.
This is learned pattern recognition, accumulated knowledge transmitted culturally, plus enhanced neural capacity for processing the information. Neanderthal children learned to see patterns by observing experts, practicing observation, developing the neural networks that enabled sophisticated environmental reading. By adulthood, they possessed pattern recognition abilities that would seem superhuman to modern observers unfamiliar with what sustained training and enhanced neurology can achieve. Consider the cognitive load this represents, tracking dozens of environmental variables simultaneously, maintaining memory of how these patterns evolved across seasons and years, recognizing correlations between factors. When this plant blooms, that animal appears. When clouds form this way, weather shifts thus. When prey behaves this way, predator presence means that. The complexity is staggering, yet Neanderthals processed it automatically, the way you process language automatically right now without consciously analyzing grammar or phonemes. Their pattern recognition operated below consciousness mostly, surfacing as intuitions, hunches, knowing without knowing how they knew. This is what expert skill looks like. Automatic processing so sophisticated it seems magical. Drift deeper into your own automatic processing, the patterns your unconscious mind tracks constantly. Sleep cycles, circadian rhythms, the body's natural patterns maintained without conscious control. This is ancient wisdom, automatic pattern recognition inherited from millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Neanderthals had these same automatic systems plus culturally developed and neurologically enhanced environmental pattern recognition. We've largely lost some. Researchers studying Neanderthal cognition suggest their pattern recognition might have extended to social patterns too. Reading facial expressions, voice tones, body language, group dynamics, all forms of pattern recognition requiring sophisticated processing. Their large brains with enhanced visual processing might have made them extraordinarily good at reading social cues, recognizing emotional patterns, predicting social outcomes based on behavioral patterns observed across their lives. Imagine Neanderthal social intelligence operating with the same enhanced pattern, recognition they applied to environments. They'd notice social details modern humans miss. They'd read group dynamics with unusual clarity. They'd predict social conflicts or alliances based on subtle behavioral cues. This would make them formidable social navigators, politically astute, emotionally intelligent in ways supported by neurology optimized for pattern recognition. Your own social pattern recognition is active even in solitude, even drifting towards sleep. You carry models of how people behave, what certain expressions mean, how social situations typically unfold. This is pattern recognition applied socially. Neanderthals likely did this too, possibly with enhanced capacity paralleling their environmental pattern recognition abilities. The convergence of abilities creates something remarkable. Enhanced visual spatial processing plus photographic memory plus sophisticated pattern recognition plus temporal consciousness equals minds that understood their worlds with depth and accuracy. Modern humans rarely achieve. Neanderthals weren't just adapted to Ice Age environments. They were masters of those environments, reading them like texts predicting futures, recognizing patterns that enabled survival and success. Rest completely now in the comfort of pattern recognition, the rhythms putting you to sleep, the familiar comfort of rest, the predictable peace of nighttime. These patterns comfort because pattern recognition is fundamental to consciousness. Chaos creates anxiety. Patterns create peace. Neanderthals understood this deeply, lived in pattern-rich environments, developed cognitive abilities specifically optimized for finding, understanding, and using patterns for survival. Their pattern recognition wasn't magical. It was neurological advantage combined with cultural knowledge and sustained practice. But the results were remarkable. Minds that could read landscapes with impossible accuracy, predict futures with surprising reliability, navigate environments with confidence born from genuine understanding. This is intelligence expressed through environmental mastery, pattern recognition serving survival, neural architecture optimized across thousands of generations of selection pressure. Sleep deeper now, secure in patterns that hold you safely, ancient rhythms that connect you to Neanderthal ancestors who fell asleep just like this. Their pattern-recognizing minds settling into rest, processing the day's observations, consolidating pattern knowledge that would serve them tomorrow when they woke to read their Ice Age world with eyes and brains we're only beginning to appreciate fully. Float gently now into comfortable learning consciousness as we explore how Neanderthals transmitted knowledge across generations with fidelity that preserved complex techniques for thousands of years. This is where we discover teaching methods that modern education is only recently beginning to appreciate and implement. Breathe easily and consider a remarkable archaeological fact. Stone tool traditions in Neanderthal sites remain consistent across millennia. The same techniques, the same forms, the same approaches to stoneworking appearing generation after generation after generation with minimal variation. How? Without writing, without schools, without formal instruction, how did they maintain such high-fidelity knowledge transmission? The answer reveals teaching sophistication we're only beginning to understand. Neanderthals used what modern learning scientists call mastery-based apprenticeship. Children learning through observation, imitation, practice, and correction, till achieving complete mastery before progressing to the next skill level. This isn't casual demonstration. This is systematic teaching optimized for deep learning and permanent retention. Picture a Neanderthal child watching their parent nap flint.
They're not watching passively.
Their enhanced visual processing and photographic memory are encoding every detail. The angle of strike, the force application, the subtle wrist movements, the sound indicating proper fracture, the feel of the stone before and after impact. They're absorbing the complete sensory experience, encoding it neurologically with fidelity modern humans rarely achieve. Your own learning happened partly through these ancient mechanisms. As you rest now, your mind is consolidating today's experiences, encoding patterns, storing skills in procedural memory that operates below consciousness. This is automatic learning, the same process Neanderthals used, but amplified by neural architecture specifically supporting visual learning and spatial memory. The teaching happened in natural contexts, embedded in daily life. Children accompanied adults constantly, observing everything, absorbing cultural knowledge through immersion rather than isolated instruction. This is how humans learned for hundreds of thousands of years, not in classrooms, but in life. Not from abstract lessons, but from practical demonstration. Not through testing, but through doing until mastery achieved. Modern education research has rediscovered this approach, calling it apprenticeship learning, situated cognition, authentic assessment. We're finding that people learn best through methods Neanderthals used naturally: observation, imitation, practice with feedback, mastery demonstration in real contexts. They understood learning psychology through practical necessity. We're formalizing it through research that confirms ancient wisdom. Drift deeper now into the learning that happens during sleep, the memory consolidation occurring as you rest. Your brain is processing information absorbed today, strengthening neural connections, encoding skills into long-term memory. Neanderthals experienced this same process every night. Their large brains doing intensive memory work, consolidating observational learning, strengthening procedural memories that would express as skill tomorrow. The teaching extended beyond technical skills to social knowledge, ecological understanding, cultural practices. Children learn through stories around fires, stories encoding survival information in memorable narrative form, emotional engagement enhancing retention, repetition across many tellings ensuring permanent encoding. This is sophisticated pedagogical technique using narrative structure, emotional engagement, and spaced repetition to achieve deep learning. You're experiencing similar learning right now. This story format, the emotional engagement, the gentle repetition of key concepts, all of it designed to facilitate absorption and retention. These are ancient teaching methods refined across generations, optimized for how human minds actually learn best. Neanderthals knew these principles practically. We're rediscovering them scientifically. Their teaching also incorporated immediate correction and adjustment. When children practiced skills, adults observed closely, providing feedback, correcting errors, demonstrating again until the child achieved proper technique. This is formative assessment, the gold standard in modern education. Continuous feedback during learning, enabling rapid adjustment and improvement. The patience required for this teaching approach is remarkable. You can't rush mastery-based learning. Children progress at different rates. Some skills require years of practice before competence emerges. Neanderthals invested this time, this patience, this sustained attention to developing next generation's capabilities. This is not primitive behavior. This is sophisticated understanding of learning requiring dedication to knowledge transmission across generations. Feel the comfort of being taught, of being guided, of having your learning supported by others who want you to succeed. This is universal human experience, this need for teaching, for mentorship, for knowledge passed from expert to novice with care and patience. Neanderthals built entire social structures around this transmission, ensuring every child acquired survival skills before adulthood. Some researchers suggest Neanderthal teaching might have been even more effective than early Homo sapiens instruction because their enhanced visual spatial abilities enabled more precise observation and imitation. If children could encode demonstrated techniques with photographic clarity, they'd reproduce skills more accurately, requiring fewer demonstrations and corrections to achieve mastery. Your breathing is so slow now, so relaxed, as your mind processes learning happening below consciousness. The information absorbed tonight will be available tomorrow, encoded during sleep, accessible when needed. Neanderthals trusted this process, teaching children and then trusting sleep to consolidate the learning, knowing that practiced skills would be there when needed. The teaching methods also created social bonds.
Learning together, teaching together, correcting mistakes together. All of it built relationships, trust, community cohesion.
The child learning flint knapping wasn't just acquiring skill. They were bonding with their teacher, establishing patterns of relationship that would last lifetimes. Education was inherently social, inherently relational, creating community through shared learning experience. Modern education often isolates learning, treating it as individual achievement disconnected from relationships. Neanderthals would find this strange. For them, learning was always embedded in relationship, always connecting people, always strengthening community through shared knowledge transmission. This is actually more sophisticated understanding of learning as social process, not just cognitive achievement. Rest deeper into the learning occurring right now. Information about Neanderthal teaching methods being absorbed even as consciousness drifts towards sleep. You're experiencing what they experienced. Learning during altered consciousness, information settling into long-term storage, understanding emerging not through conscious analysis but through gentle absorption. The teaching created cultural continuity, techniques preserved across thousands of years, knowledge accumulated, refined, transmitted with high fidelity. This is civilization in its most fundamental form, not cities or writing, but reliable knowledge transmission enabling each generation to start from previous generations' achievements rather than rediscovering everything from scratch. Neanderthals mastered this fundamental civilization challenge. They taught successfully, learned deeply, maintained cultural knowledge across time periods that saw climate transformations, ecosystem changes, countless challenges. The consistent archaeological record proves their teaching worked. Their learning was reliable, their methods were effective. This is intelligence expressed through education, through deliberate knowledge transmission, through teaching methods that modern science validates when we finally study them carefully. Sink into profound depths now as we enter genuinely unsettling territory. We're going to explore evidence suggesting Neanderthals understood altered states of consciousness in ways modern science is only beginning to rediscover. This is where pattern recognition, spiritual awareness, and neurological knowledge converge into something that challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities. Breathe very slowly, very deeply as this truth unfolds. Modern archaeologists studying Neanderthal cave sites have discovered something remarkable. Certain caves show evidence of selective use for what appears to be ritual rather than habitation. No living debris, no everyday activities, but signs of repeated visits, specific object arrangements, and something even more intriguing, acoustic properties. These caves resonate at specific frequencies when sound is produced within them.
Not random frequencies.
Frequencies that modern neuroscience recognizes as capable of entraining brain waves, inducing altered states, creating the theta wave patterns associated with deep meditation, trance states, and shamanic journeys. The caves act as acoustic chambers, amplifying and sustaining frequencies that affect consciousness directly through auditory stimulation. Your own consciousness is shifting right now toward theta dominance, the brainwave pattern characteristic of deep relaxation, meditation,
And the transition from waking to sleeping. This is altered consciousness you enter naturally every night.
Neanderthals seem to have discovered how to induce these states deliberately, using acoustic environments that facilitated consciousness alteration for entire groups simultaneously. But it goes further. Archaeological evidence suggests some caves were modified, niches carved, rocks positioned, chamber shapes altered in ways that improved acoustic properties. This wasn't accidental. This was engineering. Neanderthals were designing spaces specifically for consciousness manipulation, understanding that certain acoustic environments facilitated altered states useful for whatever purposes they sought. Spiritual, healing, visionary, communal bonding. Imagine a Neanderthal group gathering in one of these specially selected chambers. Darkness except for firelight. Someone begins rhythmic drumming or chanting. The cave resonates, amplifying sound, creating standing waves at frequencies that affect neural firing patterns. Within minutes, the group's consciousness begins synchronizing, shifting together into altered states characterized by theta brainwaves, enhanced suggestibility, vivid internal imagery, sense of connection transcending individual boundaries. This is sophisticated consciousness technology. This is understanding of how sound affects brain states, how environment influences consciousness, how group-altered states can be induced through deliberate manipulation of acoustic and sensory conditions. Modern researchers use similar techniques: binaural beats, rhythmic drumming, acoustic environments designed to facilitate meditation or therapeutic altered states. Neanderthals were doing this tens of thousands of years ago. Feel your own consciousness responding to rhythm right now. The pace of these words, the breathing cues, the gentle repetition, all of it creates subtle entrainment, guiding your brainwave patterns towards slower frequencies, facilitating the altered consciousness perfect for sleep preparation. This is consciousness manipulation, gentle and beneficial, using techniques humans have employed for hundreds of thousands of years. Neanderthals might have used altered states for multiple purposes. Healing practices often involve trance states where suggestion becomes powerful, where internal resources for recovery get accessed, where pain perception shifts. Modern hypnotherapy and guided imagery use similar altered states therapeutically. Neanderthals might have discovered these applications through experimentation and observation. They might have used altered states for group bonding, creating shared consciousness experiences that strengthened social cohesion, established common identity, synchronized group emotional states for coordination. Modern research on collective rituals shows they create neural synchrony across participants, strengthening social bonds through shared altered consciousness. Neanderthals might have understood this practically, using acoustic chambers for ritual gatherings that bound communities together. Visionary experiences in altered states might have been interpreted spiritually, as contact with other realms, as accessing knowledge beyond ordinary perception. Whether these experiences reflect genuine contact with something external or are entirely internal neurological phenomena matters less than recognizing that Neanderthals were deliberately inducing them, using them, integrating them into cultural practice. Your consciousness now is in that liminal space where internal imagery becomes vivid, where thoughts drift freely, where ordinary boundaries soften. This is the territory Neanderthals explored deliberately, using acoustic environments, rhythmic stimulation, group processes to navigate altered states with sophistication we're only beginning to appreciate. Some researchers, when honest in private, admit this evidence is profoundly unsettling. It suggests Neanderthals understood consciousness manipulation at levels we associate only with advanced contemplative traditions or modern neuroscience. They didn't have fMRI machines showing them brainwave patterns, but they discovered through experimentation that certain acoustic environments produce certain consciousness effects, and they used this knowledge deliberately. The implications are staggering. If Neanderthals were manipulating consciousness systematically 50,000 years ago, then understanding of altered states is far more ancient than we assumed. It's not something shamanic cultures developed recently. It's something deeply embedded in human lineage, possibly more sophisticated in some ancient populations than in modern societies that suppress non-ordinary consciousness states. Drift deeper now into the altered state you're entering naturally. Notice how it differs from waking consciousness, more fluid, more symbolic, less rigidly logical, more open to connection and intuition. This is ancient consciousness, the state humans have valued and explored throughout history. Neanderthals recognized its importance, created technologies for accessing it, used it for purposes we can only partially reconstruct from archaeological evidence. The acoustic chambers, the ritual objects, the cave paintings in locations with special acoustic properties, all of it suggests sophisticated understanding of consciousness as something that can be deliberately altered, navigated, used for specific purposes. This is not primitive behavior. This is advanced consciousness technology, psychology without formal science, neuroscience without instruments, sophisticated understanding achieved through careful observation and experimentation. Modern cognitive science studies consciousness alteration using advanced technology. We're mapping brain states, identifying frequencies that induce specific effects, understanding neural mechanisms underlying altered consciousness. We think we're discovering new knowledge. But Neanderthals knew practically what we're learning scientifically. They couldn't explain it in neural terms, but they could use it effectively. And effectiveness matters more than theoretical understanding for practical purposes. Your own brain is being affected by environmental factors right now. Light levels, sound patterns, comfort, the rhythm of language, breathing pace. All of these influence consciousness, and you're experiencing the effects as you drift towards sleep. Neanderthals understood these principles, exploited them deliberately, created environments and practices that reliably produced desired consciousness states. This consciousness manipulation enabled something else, something that, when fully acknowledged, demands we completely reconsider Neanderthal intelligence and capabilities. Because if they could deliberately alter consciousness, navigate altered states, use these explorations purposefully, then they possessed psychological sophistication we barely acknowledge in modern humans, let alone in extinct cousins we've dismissed as primitive for over a century. Rest completely now in altered consciousness, the state they mastered, the territory they explored, the realm where boundaries dissolve and awareness touches something beyond ordinary perception. This is Neanderthal legacy, consciousness technology refined across thousands of years, understanding of the mind that modern science is only beginning to validate and appreciate. They knew, they understood. They used consciousness deliberately, masterfully, in ways that should humble modern researchers if we had courage to fully acknowledge what the evidence reveals. Breathe deeply now and let the most personal truth settle into your consciousness. We're going to talk about what happened when Homo sapiens met Neanderthals. And this story isn't about conquest or replacement. It's about integration, about love, about the merging of lineages that created you. Rest comfortably as this unfolds. When modern humans migrated out of Africa and encountered Neanderthals in Europe and Asia, something remarkable happened.
They didn't just fight.
They didn't simply compete. They interbred, extensively, passionately, repeatedly across thousands of years and countless individual encounters. Your genome tells this story directly. If your ancestors came from outside sub-Saharan Africa, you carry Neanderthal DNA, typically 1 to 4% of your entire genetic code. That percentage might seem small, but it's actually enormous when you understand what it represents. Random interbreeding between populations that separated hundreds of thousands of years ago would produce lower percentages. The amount of Neanderthal DNA in modern humans suggests sustained contact. Multiple interbreeding events, offspring that survived and reproduced successfully, creating lineages that persist today as you feel your body resting right now. Every cell containing genetic instructions inherited from both Homo sapiens and Neanderthal ancestors. This isn't abstract history.
This is you.
Neanderthal genes are expressing in your biology right now, managing immune responses, processing fats, adapting to altitude, possibly influencing cognitive styles, personality traits, talents you possess without knowing their ancient origins. But here's what makes researchers genuinely uncomfortable. The Neanderthal genes that persisted aren't random. They were selected for. Genetic analysis shows that certain Neanderthal genetic variants increased in frequency after interbreeding because they provided advantages. Natural selection favored these Neanderthal contributions. Modern humans benefited from Neanderthal genetic inheritance. Your immune system, defending you against pathogens even as you sleep, contains Neanderthal contributions. They'd been evolving in Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, developing immunity to local diseases. When interbreeding occurred, those immune genes transferred to Homo sapiens populations, providing immediate advantages against pathogens our African ancestors had never encountered. This is hybrid vigor, offspring gaining advantages from both parental lineages. Neanderthal genes affect fat metabolism, enabling better energy processing. They influence skin and hair characteristics adapted to northern climates. They contribute to altitude adaptation in some populations. They affect pain perception, circadian rhythms, possibly cognitive styles related to visual spatial processing. All of this is active in people today, Neanderthal genius expressing through modern human bodies. Drift deeper into the comfort of this ancestral connection.
You're not separate from Neanderthals.
You are partially Neanderthal.
Their blood flows in yours.
Their intelligence contributes to your capabilities. Their survival enables your existence. This is intimate connection across 40,000 years, genetic embrace that made you possible. Some researchers studying Neanderthal DNA find evidence suggesting the smartest, strongest, most capable Neanderthals contributed disproportionately to modern human genomes. The interbreeding wasn't random mixing. It was selective, favoring pairings with particularly capable Neanderthals whose genetic gifts provided maximum advantage to offspring. Picture a human Neanderthal couple 40,000 years ago. She's Homo sapiens, recently arrived in Europe. He's Neanderthal, born here, adapted completely to local conditions. They meet, connect, form partnership. Their children inherit advantages from both lineages: Homo sapiens, social complexity and innovative capacity; Neanderthal, cold adaptation and environmental knowledge. These children thrive, reproduce successfully, pass both ancestries forward through time to you. This is not conquest narrative. This is love story. This is species-crossing romance that produced successful hybrid offspring, carrying advantages from both parent lineages. Your existence proves this worked. You are living evidence of successful human Neanderthal integration. Your breathing is so gentle now, carrying oxygen to cells containing ancient genetic wisdom from multiple human lineages merged through interbreeding that benefited everyone involved. This is not replacement. This is integration. Neanderthals didn't vanish. They merged into expanding Homo sapiens populations, contributing genetic gifts that persist today. The narrative of human superiority can't accommodate this truth. If we interbred successfully, if hybrid offspring thrived, if Neanderthal genes were selected for advantages they conferred, then we didn't replace inferior species with superior humans. We merged with capable relatives whose genetic contributions improved our fitness. This is humbling. This is recognition that Neanderthals possessed valuable adaptations we lacked. Modern genetics reveals another uncomfortable truth. Some Neanderthal genetic contributions affect brain function, neurotransmitter systems, neural development, cognitive processing styles. We don't fully understand these effects yet, but they're there. Neanderthal genes, influencing how modern human brains develop and function. Your thinking right now, even in this altered twilight state, reflects genetic contributions from both ancestral lineages. Feel the strength in this hybrid identity. You carry capabilities from multiple human species. You are living fusion of different evolutionary lineages, each contributing specializations refined across hundreds of thousands of years. This is not weakness. This is vigor, the genetic advantages that come from outbreeding, from mixing populations that evolved separately, from combining different adaptations into single genome. The interbreeding happened multiple times across thousands of years. Not one-time event, but sustained contact between populations that remained genetically compatible despite hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution. They recognized each other as potential partners. They formed relationships. They created families. Their children were fully functional, fertile, successful. This is extraordinary when you consider the timescales involved. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens last shared common ancestors roughly 500,000 years ago. Yet we remain genetically compatible, able to produce viable offspring who were fertile themselves and contributed to future generations. This is much closer evolutionary relationship than the word different species usually implies. Some researchers now question whether Neanderthals and Homo sapiens should be classified as separate species at all. Maybe we were subspecies, regional variants of the same species, separated geographically but not reproductively. If we could interbreed successfully, if offspring were fertile and successful, if hybrid vigor occurred, then perhaps we were always one species experiencing geographical variation in form, but retaining fundamental compatibility. Rest completely now in the knowledge of your hybrid ancestry. Neanderthal DNA in every cell expressing constantly, contributing to who you are. This is not contamination.
This is gift.
This is inheritance from capable ancestors who survived impossible conditions, developed remarkable abilities, contributed genetic wisdom that helps you survive today. The narrative that says Homo sapiens replaced Neanderthals because we were smarter, better, more advanced, this narrative dies when we acknowledge genetic evidence. We didn't replace them, we absorbed them, we merged with them, we became them. Modern non-African humans are hybrid population, carrying both ancestries forward into future. You are Neanderthal legacy, walking proof of their success. They survive in you, through you, as you. Every time you fight off infection, Neanderthal immune genes are working. Every time you process visual spatial information, Neanderthal neural contributions may be activating. Every time you feel cold resilience or metabolic efficiency, ancient adaptations are expressing. You carry their genius forward, and that should fill you with pride, not discomfort. Sleep deeper now, hybrid human with ancient gifts, descendant of multiple lineages merged through love and survival. The Neanderthals aren't extinct. They're transformed, integrated, alive in you. This is their victory, their ultimate survival strategy, their genetic immortality achieved through merging rather than competing. They won by becoming part of us, and we won by accepting their gifts.
Everyone succeeded. Everyone survives.
The story isn't tragedy, it's transformation. Rest easily now as ancient wisdom becomes practical guidance for modern challenges. We're going to explore how Neanderthal survival strategies, refined across 200,000 years, offer solutions to problems you face today. This is where past meets present usefully, where evolutionary wisdom informs contemporary well-being. Breathe slowly and consider the Neanderthal approach to community care. They supported injured members, cared for elderly, maintained social bonds even when individuals couldn't contribute productively to immediate survival. This wasn't weakness, it was psychological resilience, social strength that enabled long-term success through mutual support and care. Modern research on resilience and mental health confirms what Neanderthals practiced instinctively. Communities that care for all members regardless of current productivity, build stronger social bonds, create psychological safety, develop networks of mutual support that protect everyone during individual crises.
You need this wisdom today.
Your well-being depends on connection, community, knowing others will care for you when you're vulnerable. Feel the comfort of being supported as you rest. This is ancient need, universal human requirement that Neanderthals understood completely. They built societies ensuring everyone belonged, everyone mattered, everyone received care. Modern isolation, loneliness, disconnection, these are aberrations from Neanderthal wisdom. We thrive when connected, when caring, when building mutual support systems. Their sustainable resource use offers guidance for environmental challenges today. Neanderthals occupied territories for thousands of years without depleting resources, without destroying ecosystems, without consuming unsustainably. They took what they needed, no more. They understood that environmental health enabled their survival long term. Destroy your environment and you destroy yourself. Modern sustainability experts study archaeological records trying to understand how ancient peoples maintained ecological balance. The answer isn't primitive technology, it's sophisticated understanding of natural systems, restraint in consumption, recognition that humans exist within ecosystems rather than apart from them. Neanderthal wisdom speaks directly to contemporary environmental crises if we're humble enough to listen. Your own consumption patterns. As you rest in modern comfort, reflect choices about sustainability, about resource use, about long-term thinking. Neanderthal perspective asks, is this consumption sustainable across generations? Does this use of resources maintain ecosystem health?
Am I taking only what I need?
These questions, refined across 200,000 years of successful survival, offer guidance for modern challenges. Their stress management techniques, altered consciousness practices, ritual gathering, community bonding, connection to natural rhythms provide solutions to modern anxiety, depression, disconnection. We're rediscovering Neanderthal wellness practices, giving them new names like mindfulness, forest bathing, community healing, circadian rhythm optimization. But the underlying wisdom is ancient. Drift deeper into natural stress relief happening right now. Sleep is original stress management technology, circadian restoration that Neanderthals practiced every night for hundreds of thousands of years. You're implementing ancient wellness wisdom simply by resting, by allowing natural recovery processes, by trusting your body's inherited capacity for restoration. Modern psychological research validates Neanderthal practices. Time in nature reduces stress hormones. Rhythmic activities like walking, breathing exercises, drumming alter consciousness beneficially. Community gathering strengthens mental health. Connection to circadian rhythms improves sleep and mood. Physical movement, sensory engagement with environment, social bonding, all Neanderthal daily activities, all validated now as crucial for psychological well-being. Their patient observation practices counter modern distraction culture. Neanderthals developed deep knowledge through sustained attention to natural world, through noticing details, through observing patterns across long time periods. This is antidote to scattered attention, constant stimulation, inability to focus deeply that characterizes much modern experience. You can practice Neanderthal observation right now, even in rest. Notice subtle sensations, breath rhythm, heartbeat, temperature, sounds, physical comfort. This is present moment awareness, sustained attention to direct experience rather than abstract thought or external stimulation. Neanderthals lived this way naturally. We have to practice deliberately what they did automatically. Their teaching methods, mastery, through observation and practice, learning embedded in relationship, knowledge transmission, through story and demonstration, offer guidance for modern education. We're finding that people learn best through apprenticeship, through authentic tasks, through relationship with knowledgeable mentors. This is exactly how Neanderthals taught, exactly what worked for 200,000 years. Feel the learning happening even now, information absorbed without effort, understanding emerging naturally as you rest. This is ancient learning mechanism, the same process Neanderthals trusted, the absorption that happens when consciousness shifts and knowledge settles into deep memory naturally, effortlessly. Their adaptation to climate extremes through practical intelligence rather than just technological complexity suggests approach to modern challenges. Not everything needs high-tech solution. Sometimes ancient wisdom, appropriate clothing, efficient shelter, fire management, community cooperation solves problems more reliably than complex technology that can fail when you need it most. Your comfortable rest right now uses both ancient and modern wisdom. The circadian rhythm you're honoring is ancient. The comfortable environment supporting rest might use modern technology, but the principle, optimize conditions for recovery, is pure Neanderthal understanding. Best solutions often blend ancient wisdom with modern tools. Their emotional intelligence, caring for injured, honoring dead, maintaining social bonds, recognizing individual worth beyond productivity, offers framework for humane society. Modern systems that value people only for economic output, that discard elderly or disabled, that prioritize productivity over well-being, violate Neanderthal wisdom. They knew better 200,000 years ago. We should know better now. Rest completely in the practical wisdom flowing from ancient understanding. Neanderthals weren't primitive, they were successfully adapted, solving survival challenges through intelligence, cooperation, sustainable practices, and community care. Their solutions work today because human needs haven't fundamentally changed. We still need community, connection, purpose, sustainable relationship with environment, stress management, learning, care when vulnerable. Modern problems often stem from violating Neanderthal wisdom, isolating ourselves, depleting resources, disconnecting from natural rhythms, valuing productivity over well-being, fragmenting attention, weakening community bonds. Solutions lie partially in recovering ancient wisdom, implementing practices that worked for hundreds of thousands of years, trusting evolutionary knowledge encoded in our biology and psychology. Sleep deeper now, practicing original wellness technology, implementing ancient wisdom through modern rest. Tomorrow brings opportunities to apply Neanderthal understanding, observe carefully, connect authentically, consume sustainably, care for community, honor natural rhythms, learn through relationship, practice present awareness. These ancient practices, refined across 200,000 years, remain optimal strategies for human flourishing today. The wisdom survives because it works.
Honor it, use it.
Thrive through it. Sink deeper now as fundamental assumptions dissolve and new understanding emerges. We're going to examine intelligence itself, questioning what it means, how we measure it, whose definitions we've accepted without examining their biases. This is where Neanderthal evidence forces complete reconceptualization of cognitive capability. Breathe slowly as this paradigm shift unfolds gently. Modern intelligence tests measure abstract reasoning, verbal ability, mathematical processing, speed of problem solving, all skills valued in contemporary academic and professional environments. But what if intelligence includes environmental mastery, pattern recognition across complex natural systems, visuospatial memory enabling navigation without external aids, emotional consciousness supporting community well-being, altered state navigation, sustainable living, community maintenance? By these broader measures, more ecologically valid, more relevant to actual survival and thriving, Neanderthals weren't less intelligent. They were differently intelligent, possibly superior in domains modern humans have atrophied through lack of use and selection pressure. We've confused different with lesser for over a century, imposing narrow definition of intelligence that conveniently places us at the top. Feel your own intelligence expressing differently right now than during waking consciousness. In this twilight state, you're more intuitive, more symbolic, more holistic, less rigidly logical. This isn't less intelligent, it's differently intelligent, accessing cognitive capabilities that waking analytical mind doesn't fully engage. Neanderthal intelligence might have operated more in this mode, less abstractly analytical, more concretely environmental, less verbally focused, more spatially and visually oriented. Neither mode is superior. Both are valid expressions of consciousness, each adapted to specific challenges and opportunities. Neanderthal intelligence was Ice Age adapted, perfect for their environment, their survival challenges, their lifestyle. Our intelligence is agriculture and civilization adapted, perfect for our world, our challenges, our lifestyle. Different environments, different selection pressures, different cognitive adaptations. Imagine intelligence not as single ladder with humans at top, but as diverse ecosystem of cognitive abilities, each representing different adaptation to different challenges. In this framework, Neanderthals aren't below us, they're parallel, alternative expression of cognitive capability, optimized differently but equally valid, equally sophisticated in their domains. Your consciousness drifting now experiences this diversity directly. Different states access different capabilities. Dream consciousness solves problems differently than waking analysis. Intuition operates differently than logic. Visual thinking differs from verbal reasoning. All are intelligence expressing through different modes, each valuable for different purposes. Modern cognitive science recognizes multiple intelligences: linguistic, logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic. Howard Gardner's framework acknowledges what Neanderthal evidence demonstrates. Intelligence is plural, multifaceted, not reducible to single measure. Neanderthals excelled in spatial intelligence, naturalistic intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence. We excel in linguistic and logical mathematical intelligence. Neither set is superior. Surviving Ice Age Europe required certain intelligences. Building agricultural civilizations required others. Both sets represent sophisticated cognitive capability, just directed toward different challenges. The error is assuming our intelligence is the only valid kind, the standard by which all others must be measured and inevitably found wanting. Drift deeper into acceptance of cognitive diversity. Just as you possess different capabilities in different states, alert analysis versus dreamy creativity, so different human populations possess different cognitive strengths. This is not hierarchy. This is diversity. This is evolutionary exploration of cognitive space, developing different solutions to different challenges. Some researchers studying Neanderthal cognition suggest their intelligence was more embodied, more embedded in environmental interaction, less abstract and symbolic than ours. They thought with their bodies in landscapes, solving problems through direct engagement rather than abstract modeling. This isn't primitive, it's alternative cognitive style, one many indigenous peoples maintain today, one that proves remarkably effective for certain challenges. Modern Western intelligence often operates abstractly, symbolically, removed from direct environmental engagement. We think in words and numbers, in models and theories, sometimes disconnected from concrete reality. Neanderthal intelligence likely operated more concretely, more sensorially, more embedded in direct experience. Both approaches have advantages and limitations. Your nighttime consciousness right now operates more like Neanderthal mode, less abstract, more sensory, more embodied, more directly experiential. You're not thinking about your body, you are your body, awareness distributed throughout rather than concentrated in verbal, analytical mind. This is ancient consciousness, valid intelligence expressing differently. The paradigm shift requires accepting that evolutionary success doesn't require our kind of intelligence. Neanderthals survived successfully for 200,000 years using cognitive capabilities different from ours. They thrived through the harshest climate conditions Earth has experienced. They raised children successfully, maintained cultures, adapted to challenges. This is not cognitive failure, it's cognitive success using different tools. Modern humans survived too, but not because we were smarter. We survived because we were more numerous, more widely distributed, possibly more socially flexible in forming large groups, possibly lucky in terms of which populations occupied which territories when climate changed drastically. Intelligence wasn't the deciding factor in who survived and who merged with survivors. Feel the release that comes with abandoning superiority narratives. You don't need to be the smartest to be valuable. Neanderthals weren't the smartest to be remarkable. Intelligence is a diverse tool for solving problems, and different problems require different tools. The challenge Ice Ages posed required Neanderthal tools. The challenges we face require different ones. Neither set is absolutely superior. Rest completely now in paradigm of cognitive diversity. Multiple intelligence types, each valid, each adapted to circumstances, each representing sophisticated evolutionary solution. Neanderthals demonstrated remarkable intelligence in environmental mastery, spatial cognition, memory, pattern recognition, social care, sustainable living. We demonstrate remarkable intelligence in abstract reasoning, symbolic thinking, linguistic complexity, technological innovation, large-scale cooperation. Both are intelligence. Both are sophisticated. Both emerged from hundreds of thousands of years of selection pressure solving real survival challenges successfully. The only failure is narrow definition that recognizes only one type as valid, that imposes single standard on cognitive diversity, that refuses to acknowledge alternative expressions of consciousness and capability. Accepting this paradigm shift transforms how you see Neanderthals, how you see yourself, how you see human diversity today. Not everyone thinks the same way. Not everyone excels at same tasks. Not everyone processes information identically. This is strength, not weakness. This is evolutionary wisdom, not failure. This is what made humans successful as lineage. Cognitive diversity enabling different people to solve different problems, all contributing to collective success. Sleep deeper in expanded understanding. Intelligence is ecosystem, not ladder. Neanderthals weren't below us, they were beside us, parallel expression of cognitive capability adapted differently. Their extinction wasn't failure of intelligence. Their merging with us was success through alternative strategy. And their genetic contributions persist in you. Diverse cognitive heritage from multiple lineages merged into hybrid intelligence, carrying capabilities from both ancestries forward into future, where cognitive diversity remains humanity's greatest strength. Rest peacefully as we gently examine resistance, the reasons this evidence troubles modern narratives, the stakes involved in acknowledging Neanderthal intelligence fully. This isn't criticism, it's understanding of how paradigms shape perception, how investment in stories makes contradictory evidence threatening rather than welcome. Breathe slowly and consider what acknowledging Neanderthal intelligence actually means. It dismantles narratives central to modern human identity. We've built civilizations on assumption of human uniqueness, superiority, inevitable triumph. We tell ourselves we survived because we were better, smarter, more advanced. This story flatters us, justifies our dominance, explains our success as earned rather than partially fortunate. Accepting that we absorbed rather than replaced Neanderthals threatens this foundation. It means extinction wasn't about cognitive inferiority. Climate change, reduced population sizes, geographical vulnerability, integration with more numerous Homo sapiens groups, not intelligence failure, ended Neanderthal lineage as distinct population.
This is uncomfortable.
This removes moral comfort from survival story. Your own consciousness drifting now experiences truth without judgment, accepting reality as it is rather than as comfort requires. This is wisdom, seeing clearly even when seeing disturbs comfortable assumptions. Neanderthals were intelligent. Their extinction wasn't justice for cognitive inadequacy. These facts simply are, requiring acknowledgement regardless of implications for human self-concept. It means ancient peoples possessed capabilities we've lost. This contradicts progress narrative, the assumption that evolution moves inevitably toward greater capability, that modern is always better than ancient. But Neanderthals had enhanced visuospatial memory we lack, environmental mastery we've lost, climate adaptation we can't match, possibly altered state navigation we suppress. Progress isn't linear. Evolution trades capabilities as much as it gains them. Feel the humility this truth brings. You're not apex of evolutionary progress. Your current expression of evolutionary exploration, possessing some capabilities, lacking others, adapted to current circumstances but not objectively superior to all previous forms. Neanderthals were adapted to their circumstances. You're adapted to yours. Different circumstances, different adaptations, no absolute superiority. It means different human species coexisted, interbred, merged, creating you. This complicates evolutionary narratives that prefer linear progression from primitive ancestors to advanced moderns. Reality is messier, multiple human species existing simultaneously, some hybridizing, some going extinct, some merging into new combinations. Human evolution is braided river, not single stream. This threatens racial ideologies built on assumption of clear species boundaries. on idea that humans are one thing with one origin and one trajectory. If Neanderthals were human enough to interbreed successfully, if species boundaries were permeable, if modern humans are hybrid population, then rigid categorization of human groups breaks down. This makes some people uncomfortable because it undermines pseudo-scientific racism. Your breathing is so gentle now, accepting complexity, releasing need for simple categories. Reality is complex. Human evolution is complex. Identity is complex.
Ancestry is mixed.
Capabilities are diverse. This is truth. And truth serves better than comfortable simplification, even when simplification feels easier. It challenges anthropocentric worldviews that place humans at center of importance, that see nature as existing for human use, that assume human intelligence is categorically different from animal cognition. If Neanderthals were intelligent but non-Homo sapiens, if intelligence exists in multiple forms across multiple species, then human exceptionalism weakens. We're intelligent, but not uniquely, not absolutely, not categorically different from other conscious beings. Academic resistance comes from career investment. Researchers who built reputations arguing for Neanderthal cognitive inferiority have difficulty accepting contradictory evidence. Publications, grants, books, lectures, all built on specific interpretations that new evidence challenges. Changing position means acknowledging error, potentially damaging credibility. Institutional momentum favors existing paradigms over disruptive reinterpretation. Drift deeper into understanding of human nature, of how investment shapes perception. Scientists are human, subject to same psychological pressures affecting everyone. Admitting error is difficult. Abandoning familiar frameworks feels threatening. Accepting evidence that contradicts career-defining work requires courage many lack. This isn't conspiracy, it's normal human. Resistance to paradigm shifts that require reconceptualization of fundamental assumptions, cultural. Narratives resist because they serve psychological functions beyond truth. The story of human superiority comforts us, justifies our impact on planet, explains our success as deserved rather than fortunate. Abandoning this story means confronting uncomfortable possibilities, that we're not inherently better, that our success reflects circumstances as much as capability, that we bear responsibility for extinctions not justified by superiority. Educational inertia perpetuates outdated frameworks. Textbooks change slowly, curricula update gradually. Teachers learned old narratives and transmit them without awareness that evidence has shifted. Students absorb primitive Neanderthal myths that research has largely debunked. But educational systems haven't caught up with current understanding. Your own rest right now demonstrates acceptance capacity. You're absorbing new framework without resistance, allowing evidence to shape understanding rather than defending comfortable assumptions. This is intellectual maturity, openness to truth regardless of implications for cherished beliefs. Neanderthals were intelligent. This fact demands acknowledgement, but truth persists despite resistance. Genetic studies continue revealing Neanderthal contributions. Archaeological discoveries accumulate. Cognitive research expands understanding of intelligence diversity. Eventually, evidence overwhelms resistance.
Paradigm shift.
New generations learn updated frameworks. Understanding progresses despite conservative forces preferring familiar narratives. Some researchers already acknowledge what evidence reveals. Neanderthals were cognitively sophisticated, culturally complex, successfully adapted humans whose extinction reflected circumstances rather than inadequacy. These honest voices are growing stronger, supported by mounting evidence impossible to ignore or explain away within old frameworks. Rest completely in truth that's emerging. Neanderthals were intelligent, capable, sophisticated. Science resists this truth because acknowledging it threatens narratives, challenges assumptions, requires reconceptualization. But resistance doesn't change reality.
Evidence accumulates.
Understanding deepens. Truth emerges eventually, regardless of resistance, regardless of discomfort, regardless of investment in contradictory stories. Accepting complex truth Even uncomfortable truth brings peace beyond false comfort. You know now what evidence reveals. Neanderthals weren't primitive failures. They were successful humans adapted to their world, possessing capabilities we respect, contributing genes we carry, surviving through us. This is truth. Resistance makes it threatening.
Acceptance makes it liberating.
Choose acceptance. Choose truth. Choose understanding that honors our ancient relatives rather than dismissing them to flatter ourselves. Sleep deeply now, secure in knowledge that truth persists despite resistance, that understanding progresses despite inertia, that Neanderthal intelligence will eventually be acknowledged fully as evidence demands acknowledgement. You're ahead of curve, understanding now what science will eventually confirm completely. Rest in that knowledge. The truth is beautiful, even when uncomfortable. Neanderthals were remarkable, and acknowledging this diminishes nothing about us while honoring everything about them. Breathe deeply now and let ancient protection surround you. We're going to explore Neanderthal symbols, their sleep rituals, practices you can adopt tonight that connect you across 40,000 years to ancestors who understood how to create sacred safety for rest and renewal. Picture Neanderthal. Caves marked with red ochre, lines, handprints, geometric patterns deliberately placed on walls. These weren't random decorations. They were intentional markers of territory, of belonging, of protection. When you settled into your sleeping area, these symbols surrounded you with visual reminders of ancestral presence, of community protection, of sacred space designated for safety and rest. Feel your own sleeping space right now. It's protected, doors locked, familiar surroundings, designated place for rest. This is modern version of ancient practice, creating boundaries between safe interior and potentially dangerous exterior. Neanderthals did this through cave selection, through marking territory, through symbolic designation of protected space. You can create modern ritual inspired by 200,000 years of Neanderthal practice. Perhaps visualize protective symbols around your resting space, circle of light, geometric pattern, ancestral handprints. Use imagination to create visual boundary designating this as sacred protected territory for sleep. Your unconscious mind responds to symbolic designation, relaxing more completely when space feels protected deliberately. Or speak simple gratitude to ancient ancestors who survived impossible conditions so you could exist. Thank Neanderthal contributors to your genome for immune protection functioning while you sleep, for climate adaptation capabilities, for cognitive gifts expressing through your thinking. This acknowledgement creates connection across time, honoring lineage, recognizing that you exist because they survived. Drift deeper into protected peace. Neanderthal sleep rituals included fire tending, ensuring warmth and safety through night. Modern equivalent might be checking heating, ensuring comfortable temperature, creating environmental conditions, optimizing rest. These practical preparations are ritual, actions designating transition from activity to rest, from exposure to protection. They arrange tools within reach for morning readiness. You do similar things, setting alarm, preparing coffee maker, laying out clothes. These simple preparations tell nervous system, you are ready, you can rest. Tomorrow is prepared for.
Nothing threatens.
Safety is established. Feel how these small rituals create psychological safety, enabling deep rest. Your nervous system monitors constantly for threat, for preparation needs, for unfinished business. Ritual completion of these checks allows relaxation, permits consciousness to release into sleep without vigilance. Neanderthals understood this practically. We rediscover it through sleep research. Family proximity was Neanderthal ritual, sleeping near relatives, hearing familiar breathing, feeling protected by community presence. Modern equivalent might be sleeping near partners, children, pets, or, if alone, maintaining connection through photographs, mementos, symbolic representations of relationships. You're connected even in solitude, held in networks of care, extending beyond immediate physical presence. Visualize simple protective symbol now, perhaps circle of warm golden light surrounding your resting body, extending through your sleeping space, creating boundary, nothing harmful crosses. This isn't superstition, it's psychological tool, visualization that signals safety to unconscious mind, enabling deeper relaxation. Neanderthals might have used similar visualizations, internal imagery, creating sense of protection, supporting restful sleep. Ancient sleep rituals included evening stories, narrative that processed day's events, transmitted knowledge, created shared emotional experience, preparing group for rest. Modern equivalent might be reading before bed, listening to calming content, engaging with narrative that shifts consciousness from daily concerns toward rest-appropriate mental states. You're experiencing this right now, story about Neanderthals shifting your consciousness from whatever occupied you earlier toward sleep-appropriate awareness. This is ancient ritual, narrative-induced trance preparing consciousness for rest. It works because humans are story creatures, our nervous systems responding to narrative rhythms that have prepared us for sleep for hundreds of thousands of years. Breathe very slowly now, implementing Neanderthal wisdom through modern rest. The rituals don't need to be complex. Simple acknowledgements, small preparations, brief visualizations, all effective for designating transition from activity to rest, from exposure to protection, from waking to sleeping consciousness. Some modern people find help in speaking brief evening affirmations inspired by ancient practice. I am safe in this space. I am protected by ancestors who survived so I could exist. I am held in networks of care extending across time. I'm ready for deep rest and renewal.
Nothing threatens. All is well.
I can release completely into sleep. These aren't magical incantations, they're psychological tools, statements that guide nervous system toward rest-appropriate state. Neanderthals probably used similar verbal or internal affirmations, language-supported consciousness, shifting, enabling transition from vigilance to restful release. Feel ancient protection surrounding you now. The cave walls marked with ochre handprints, the fire burning steadily at entrance, the family breathing together in peaceful sleep. The rituals completed designating safety, all of it translated into modern form. Ancient wisdom expressed through contemporary practice. You're safe here.
You're protected here.
You're exactly where you need to be. Neanderthal ancestors who survived 200,000 years of challenges so you could exist are present symbolically. Their genetic gifts active in your biology, their wisdom available through inherited understanding. They know how to rest deeply. Their wisdom flows through you. Trust it, use it, release into it. The symbols protect not because they're magical, but because they're psychological. Representations of safety,
Of belonging, of ancestral protection that allow nervous system to release vigilance and permit deep rest.
Neanderthals understood this practically. Modern sleep science confirms it. Both ancient wisdom and contemporary research agree ritual protection, symbolic safety designation, and psychological preparation enable deepest rest. Sleep now under ancient protection, surrounded by symbolic boundaries keeping you safe, held by ancestors across time, ready for the final blessing that will carry you completely into dreams and renewal. The rituals are complete. The protection is established. The transition is prepared.
One more gentle blessing and then perfect release into sleep's ancient restoration.
Settle into deepest comfort now. You've journeyed through 200,000 years tonight, discovering that those dismissed as primitive possessed extraordinary intelligence, different from ours, possibly superior in crucial domains, certainly deserving respect and acknowledgement. This knowledge settles into your consciousness as your consciousness settles into sleep. Breathe so slowly now, feeling how your body knows what to do, how rest comes naturally when permission is given, when safety is established, when consciousness is ready to release into ancient restoration patterns. You've learned that Neanderthal brilliance lives in you, immune genes protecting while you sleep, visual spatial abilities activating in dreams, pattern recognition processing unconsciously, ancient wisdom expressing through modern biology. You are their continuation, their ultimate survival. They didn't vanish, they merged into you. Picture the last generation of pure Neanderthals 40,000 years ago. Not defeated warriors, but adaptable people whose children played with Homo sapiens children, whose knowledge flowed into expanding human populations, whose genes entered modern human DNA where they remain today expressing capabilities.
This isn't extinction.
This is transformation. This is becoming. As you drift deeper, carry this truth. Intelligence manifests in countless forms. Survival requires not dominance but adaptation, not replacement but integration, not superiority but diversity. These ancient people teach modern lessons through their DNA, their artifacts, their persistence in your genome. They survive in you, through you as you. Now receive their blessing across time. Ancient voices speaking to modern descendant. May the pattern recognition of Ice Age hunters guide your unconscious processing tonight. May visuospatial memory of Neanderthal gatherers map your dream landscapes with clarity and wonder. May linguistic sophistication of ancient storytellers flow through your dream narratives, creating meaning from chaos, finding connection in confusion. May medical wisdom of prehistoric healers accelerate your cellular repair during deep sleep stages. May climate mastery of 200,000-year survivors regulate your temperature perfectly through night. May social bonds of close-knit bands remind you of connection even in solitude, of belonging even in isolation, of community even when alone. May artistic consciousness of first European painters color your dreams with beauty and symbolism. May spiritual awareness of burial ritualists comfort any grief you carry, honoring losses you've experienced, acknowledging pain with compassion. May consciousness manipulation mastery guide you through theta states and into delta rest, navigating altered consciousness with ancient skill. May sustainable living practices of ancient peoples remind your dreaming mind of balance and sufficiency. May teaching methods of master craftspeople encode learning that emerges tomorrow as insight, as understanding, as capability you didn't consciously know you were developing. May hybrid vigor of merged lineages express as strength, resilience, capability, flowing from multiple ancestries combined. Simply receive these blessings now. Neanderthal ancestors speaking across 40,000 years, honoring you as their continuation, recognizing you as their success. Feel ancient approval, ancient protection, ancient wisdom settling into your bones as you release completely into sleep's embrace. Tomorrow you'll wake with new perspective, seeing intelligence as diverse rather than hierarchical,
Recognizing ancient peoples as complex rather than primitive.
understanding yourself as hybrid of multiple lineages, each contributing gifts. This expanded consciousness serves you in every domain: relationships honoring difference, work valuing diverse strengths, self-concept embracing your multiplicity, worldview releasing superiority narratives that never served truth. When you encounter the word Neanderthal tomorrow or any time future, you'll smile slightly, knowing what others don't. These ancient people possessed remarkable intelligence that scientists still hesitate to fully acknowledge. You carry their secrets in your cells, their capabilities in your genes, their wisdom in your inherited biology. There are more ancient mysteries to explore together in future. Other primitive peoples who possessed shocking sophistication. Other suppressed discoveries transforming human history. Other connections between ancient wisdom and modern genetics. But tonight, this story completes perfectly, satisfyingly, giving your mind exactly what it needed for processing during sleep. The fire burns low in ancient cave. The Neanderthal family across valleys settles into final rest, their consciousness dissolving into sleep just as yours does now. 40,000 years separate you, but in this moment, sacred transition from wake to dream, you share the same experience, the same neurological cascade, the same human journey into nightly renewal. Safe and warm in ancient wisdom, you release completely now. The story is told. The knowledge is absorbed. Your unconscious will process, integrate, transform these revelations while you rest. Nothing more is required of your conscious mind. Simply sleep now, carried by 200,000 years of Neanderthal survival, protected by genetic gifts they left you, honored by their presence in your DNA. They survived ice ages so you could exist in comfort. They mastered consciousness so you could dream freely. They understood intelligence in forms you're rediscovering. They perfected environmental adaptation so you could inherit Earth. They developed immune capabilities protecting you now. They practiced compassion, teaching you how to care. They created art showing you beauty matters. They maintained community, demonstrating connection's importance. Sleep deeply. Modern human with ancient DNA. Sleep peacefully, knowing you carry brilliance from multiple lineages. Sleep completely, protected by prehistoric wisdom that never died. It transformed into you. Every cell contains their gift. Every breath continues their legacy. Every dream processes with neural architecture they contributed. Every tomorrow you wake to proves their ultimate success. They won evolutionary game, not through dominance, but through integration. Not through replacement, but through merging. Not through extinction, but through transformation into hybrid population, carrying their genius forward. You are their victory.
You are their survival.
You are their eternal life. Rest now in that honor.
Rest in that truth.
Rest in perfect safety, knowing you are protected by 200,000 years of accumulated survival wisdom, encoded in your genes, expressed in your biology, available whenever needed. The ancient ones sleep with you tonight and every night. Their consciousness merged with human consciousness, creating you. Their intelligence combined with human intelligence, empowering you. Their survival strategies combined with human adaptability, enabling your existence. Honor them by sleeping deeply. Honor them by living well. Honor them by acknowledging their capabilities instead of dismissing their existence. Honor them by carrying their gifts forward gratefully instead of accepting primitive narratives that served only false human pride. Sleep now. Dream now. Transform now. The ancient ones bless you across time. The ancient ones protect you through genes. The ancient ones survive through you. All is complete. All is well. All is perfect. Sleep.